It is you. It is you.
I know that.
So Donna, can you see everybody on the screen?
Right now I can see Tom and Danielle, and Matt is very dark. You're very dark, Matt, by the way.
So
And someone I don't know, I'm sorry. I think someone named Kelly maybe, and Kathleen and Barbara, and here comes Liza.
so Donna, if I want to go to a screen, a grid, where do I go to get that grid?
Let's see, mine automatically does it.
Mine doesn't come up.
So there's three little
buttons, dots.
Let me see those little dots there. Yeah, I think it's there. Show. Oh boy.
Because all I see is you.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Right, that's all I see as well.
Yeah, you should be able to do a grid.
Kathleen, try show participants. It's on the bar closest to the right side. You see that?
Yep. But all I get is the list.
Where is it?
I just get a list. I want the grid that will show. I'm going to try. Yeah, I don't see it under the three buttons.
I don't either. I'm sorry.
I don't see it either.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm listening to a meeting, so I need to turn this off.
That's all right. It's not a big deal.
We have a lot of children's voices in the background. Could somebody mute, please?
Right, okay. All right, so we'll give it one more minute. I really would like to wait until 5:30 so that all the committee members have a chance to be on here. That gives us like one more minute. And then when it's 5:30, I'll start. Okay, so if everyone can mute themselves now, I'll call the meeting to order, and then I will do a roll call, and then we begin.
Yep.
Yay. All right, so do I have the okay? I can go?
Yes, I think you're all set.
All right, thank you. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the July 21st Instructional Committee meeting of the Concord School Board. I'll begin by reading our opening statement that covers our necessity of meeting remotely. And while I'm doing these things and while people are talking, I would invite everyone else to mute their microphones so that everyone can be heard. So this is the emergency meeting statement. As chair of the Concord School Board's Instructional Committee, I find that due to the state of emergency declared by the governor as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, and in accordance with the governor's emergency order number 12, pursuant to Executive Order 2020-04, this public body is authorized to meet electronically. The business we intend to conduct today is necessary due to the need for the committee to hear a presentation from district administrators about the tentative plans for the start of the school year, given the COVID-19 pandemic. Please note that there is no physical location to observe and listen contemporaneously to this meeting. However, in accordance with the emergency order, we are A, providing public access to the meeting by telephone, with additional access by other electronic means. We are utilizing Microsoft Teams for this electronic meeting. All members of the committee have the ability to communicate contemporaneously during the meeting through this platform. The public has access to listen and, if necessary, participate in this meeting through dialing in the following phone number: 925-391-1169. Conference ID number is 913-120-135. By clicking on the link provided on the SAU8.org website or by watching the meeting on CCTV's YouTube channel. A recording of the meeting will also be posted on the CCTV's website. The board does not intend to take public comment during this meeting. I know this is different, everybody, but we have a lot to listen to tonight. So the purpose for us right now is to listen and formulate our questions. We do encourage the submission of citizen comments via email at concordinfo@sau8.org. B, providing public notice of the necessary information for accessing the meeting. We previously gave notice to the public of the necessary information for accessing the meeting, including how to access the meeting using Microsoft Teams or via telephone. The meeting and pertinent instructions were posted on the website of the board at sau8.org more than 24 hours prior to the meeting and are highlighted at the top of the website. C, mechanism for the public to alert the public body during the meeting if there are problems with access. If anybody has a problem, please call 603-513-9008. Adjourning the meeting if the public is unable to access the meeting. In the event the public is unable to access the meeting will be adjourned and rescheduled. Roll call determination of committee members participating. Okay, we'll start the meeting by taking a roll call attendance. Please note that all committee members will be participating remotely, and any votes that are taken during this meeting shall be done by a roll call vote. I would like to point out again here, this is not a meeting where any votes will be taking place. This is truly for us as a committee and a community to hear what our district has done so far. When each member states their presence, please also state whether there is anyone in the room with you during the meeting, which is required under the right to know law. Please mute your microphone when not speaking and wait to be recognized. Okay, so Ms. Cannon, are you present?
Sorry, was that me, Barb?
Yeah, that's you, Gina.
Yes, I am present, and I am alone in my den.
Excellent. Mr. Parker, are you present?
I am present. I'm
Excellent.
alone.
Ms. Smith, are you present?
I am present and I'm alone in the room.
Yay. So let's see, I'm the chair of the committee and I'm present and also alone. Other board members, Tom Croto, are you here?
I am.
Excellent, thank you for
And I
coming.
am alone. Thank you.
Yep, Chuck Crush, are you here?
I am, and I'm alone.
Thank you. Liza Ponier, are you here?
I am, and I'm alone.
Okay, and I think, oh, Jim Richards, are you here?
I am, and I'm alone. Thank you.
Yay. Okay, I think that's everybody.
Jenny?
All right.
Jenny?
Oh, Jenny Patterson, are you here? Thank you, Kathleen.
I am here. I'm presently alone, maybe joined by others in the future.
Nice, nice. So how did I sound? Did I do okay? This is your gig. So yeah. All right. So I'm not going to do a whole lot of talking here, but as chair of the instructional committee and a longtime connected member of the Concord School District, these next few weeks will be very pivotal for us. And as easy as it is to get feisty and antsy, we all know I'm good at that. This is a time where we have to do the best that we can to work together, to collectively listen with an open mind and formulate questions that will not necessarily criticize the work that's been done, but make it better or flesh it out or address things that that the committees and the people working on this may not have seen. So I myself am really looking forward to hearing it. I read all those pages. We have had tremendous feedback from the community. I want to thank community members, former board members, parents, people from other districts. 90% of the words I've heard have been suggestions and support, not criticism. So hopefully we can maintain a positive attitude. It's, this is tense time. So I'm going to hand this over to Kathleen. And at that, and Kathleen will then hand it on to the next and to the next. So my job here really will to facilitate managing questions. If committee members and board members present have questions, I will say anyone that's not a board member or involved in this process tonight, please listen and take notes. I know that the district is planning 2 forums, one between this meeting and the school board meeting at the beginning of August, and then one after that meeting. And those will be specific to address grade level concerns, family concerns. So this isn't like a do or die thing right now. We give it to you and you have to take it. This is a work in progress that's really just beginning publicly right now. So without further ado, Kathleen, it's all yours.
Thank you, Barb. It's really great that we have tonight to be able to present the work that's been done in the district. So the first thing I have to say is I will kind of reiterate what you just said relative to appreciating the work that people have done. This work began back in May. This didn't just happen in the last couple of weeks, it happened with a very large number of volunteers, our district administrators, those at the central office, as well as our building administrators have been working with us throughout this whole process. In addition, we had a number of teachers from all levels, elementary, middle, and high school working with us, support personnel. The parents have been awesome, providing a lot of feedback. Just like you, we've been getting feedback relative to great suggestions and, their heartfelt feelings about this, the decisions that we have to make. and students. So we're getting their perspective. So much appreciation for all that. I want to say, though, that this is a very difficult decision. We recognize the anxieties and the worry that families, parents, guardians, grandparents have as we try to make decisions in the best interests of the kids. So, we really get that. And all of us are experiencing the same thing within our own families. So we know how difficult this is and the pressures that are on our families during this time. So we hope that tonight will be the beginning of good discussion and sharing. Also, I'm very much appreciative of the work that the consulting work that we've received from the Department of Health and Human Services. They've been terrific. Dr. Chan and his team. The Department of Education has been very helpful. And Dr. Noble from the Concord hospital, who is in charge of infectious disease. So he's been a huge help. So you can see the broad scope of people that have been helping us. And I want to just reiterate that and how much I appreciate that. We also appreciated all the work and the response from families. They filled out 2 surveys. One happened in June. We had a large number of responses on that survey, both middle, high school students, teachers, and then a second one that we just had in July. Again, an excellent response from our families relative to those surveys. And we'll get into those later on because that's what has helped us plan. This is what drove the plan, is the feedback that we've been getting. I guess tonight, I know that you said that, the community doesn't have like an open mic tonight, but you need to deliberate tonight. You need to be able to discuss this, ask us questions, and as we prepare for our forum that we will hold. So without any further ado, let me jump into the plan and get started. And I guess it's up on the screen for those people that are at home watching or on their computer on our channel, on our cable station. So I want to begin to
Not a good spot for that. You can put it up there.
So I just would ask if people would mute their mics if they're not speaking, because everybody picks up on it. Thank you. So some of the guiding principles that we had, first and foremost, is to ensure the health and well-being of our kids and make sure that they're safe, as well as our staff. Without those two, this work doesn't happen. And so those 2 groups of our students and our staff are instrumental in this work. We want to make sure that we're continuing the academic piece towards the attainment of course competencies at various grade levels. We want to foster social and emotional growth. We got a lot of feedback around the concerns around the children because they haven't been with their friends. They haven't been interacting in the social and emotional way that they do in school. Another area that was that we really spent a lot of time on, and that was looking at our vulnerable populations. And some people have asked, well, what do you mean by that? I mean those students that we provide additional services for, whether it's our speakers, English language learners, could be our students who have learning challenges and we create individual plans for them, might be our students who are receiving Title I support and getting extra tutoring in math and in English. So we want to pay particular attention to that group. And equity, the district is committed to equity for all students across all of our schools in the district. So that has also been a lens that we've been watching very closely. Clear communication is important. We'll talk about that again throughout this presentation, and also the support and resources for our staff. We want our staff to continue to be successful. And so we need to make sure that we have the resources to support them. And then obviously to ensure that the operation and that all of this is fiscally feasible for our district. So those kind of the driving guidelines for us as we move forward. So many of you know, we've talked about this. There are 3 models that we looked at. The first one was going fully remote, very similar to what happened in the spring. We would, a second model was become fully in person, or a combination, a hybrid, where we would do some remote and some in person. The reason that we had to look at all of these three models is because we need the ability to pivot from one model to another should circumstances change around COVID-19. And so knowing that we have laid out all of the components of those three models, we will be better able to pivot and go from one to another. So I guess that's a good message here, that this plan is not carved in stone. There's not just one plan and this is the only way we're going, because we recognize all of the differences that we're going to have to address. And again, the model that we choose will be based on the virus data and what our scientists and our folks are telling us, and what kinds of strategies, mitigation strategies we can address so that we can choose one of those models. A good example is in social distancing, making sure that we can do that so that all of our youngsters are safe. And we have to recognize and we have to realize that there are some students and staff who will remain in full remote learning. We understand that. And I think we've addressed this in this plan, recognizing that for whatever reasons, may be medical reasons, personal reasons, that students and staff will be unable to participate in a direct face-to-face, fully in-person model. I just wanted to mention the first survey that was conducted in June, and we were completed by over 1,000 families, 42 students, and 365 staff members. So that was very valuable in helping us develop this plan. That feedback is what drove this plan and helped us to recognize the needs of our community. This plan wasn't written on somebody else's plan. It was written based on the feedback and the suggestions and the concerns that people aired through that feedback beginning in June when they administered it. So let me get into the three models a little bit here. And so the first one, let's talk about going fully remote. What would that look like? And what did we learn from the spring? I think that's a really important thing to think about. What did we learn about the work that we did in the spring? So we know loud and clear that we needed more structure, that the students and families wanted schedules. They wanted to know what time a certain lesson was going to be held, what time there would be a class meeting. So we want to structure the day if we do fully remote. We also heard from our families and students, they want more face-to-face instruction. They want to be able to be online with their teacher, seeing their teacher, seeing their peers in a classroom type setting. So that's another area that we've been working on given this feedback. The other one is giving the students a chance to interact with their peers. They really missed their friends, the social interactions. And so we want to build into our schedules the opportunity for the kids to interact with all of their buddies and their friends, and in their classrooms maybe make new friends, which is really important. It's an important part of school. They meet new people and make new friends. We want to improve on communication between teachers, students, and families. Families want to hear more about how the youngsters are doing, and we want to be able to provide that. So you'll see things throughout this plan around feedback and assessment from our fabulous teachers to the families. And by the way, the students want that feedback. They want to know how they're doing. They want to have those one-to-one student-teacher discussions so that they know how they're doing. Are they meeting the expectations? Are they accomplishing the competency that is set up for that class? So again, ongoing feedback. One of the areas that we need to do some work on is around assessments. How do we track the student progress when they're doing fully remote? How do we achieve that they have mastered a particular skill or competency or a lesson that they had? We need to do a better job through formative assessments and summative assessments to be able to track student progress. And also to closely monitor student attendance and supporting those youngsters that may be at risk and those youngsters who are not engaging. So we need in our buildings to be able to closely monitor that attendance so that we know that our students are participating. So that's kind of the overall look of the remote learning program, the model that we'll use. Fully in-person model is the second choice. This one is a little bit more difficult because of classroom space accommodations. I've had a chance over the last couple of weeks to visit the schools, and Matt Cashman, our facilities director, laid out, and along with his custodians, laid out classrooms for me so that I could see what a 850, 900 square foot classroom looked like given the enrollment at various grade levels. And as you know, the enrollment changes a little bit depending on the grade level and depending on the classes that are offered. So we have some issues around enough space in a classroom, and even with the support of other rooms in the building, to be able to bring in all of the youngsters and maintain proper distancing. And remember, that proper distancing is 6 feet. And I'm supporting that. The district is supporting that, that we will maintain that 6 feet distancing, which is recommended by CDC and the folks in New Hampshire that we have been consulting with. Some people have suggested, why not look at off-campus sites? They might be available. The downside of that, it was a great idea, and having, so that we can bring the kids back and they can be with their teacher. However, staffing those off-site, and I don't mean just teachers, I'm talking about a custodian there, a supervisor, somebody who would be there for the students, ensuring that it's a safe and secure environment. So we don't believe that the off-site campus situation would be practical for us at this time. Here's one other piece, and you'll see this in some of the data. We think somewhere between 20 and 25% of families are thinking that they will opt for full remote learning. So we're trying to gather that information, who would, because it's a choice, who would remote, who would be face-to-face with their teacher. And that will impact us in terms of the numbers of students in the classroom. So we're working on that right now. In our second survey, we asked parents about what if they would be coming back and who would be coming back. And that will help us determine if we have the space in a classroom to bring the students back. If 25% of the students in a classroom of 20 students, that's still 16. And when we measured out those classrooms, it looked like we could maybe get 10 in a classroom, because then you have to remember we have teachers and other folks that are going to be in those classrooms. So, but we're looking at that to see exactly how many numbers would be face-to-face versus the remote. And the third model is the one that I'm sure you hear a lot about, and that's the hybrid model. We looked at this. We would take all of our students, we would assign them to an A group or B group. That means we have the ability to reduce the size of that class. So if you have a class of 20, you can reduce it to 10. So the way it would work would be A group would attend in person. Oh, by the way, I don't want to forget this. All siblings would be assigned to the same group across levels. So we will make sure that that families don't have students that are all on different days, because we realize how difficult that would be. So we'll make sure that siblings are assigned to the same group. But if we have an A group, they'll attend in person on Monday and Thursday, and the B group attends in person on Tuesday and Friday. Some people asked us, well, why don't you do A Monday, Tuesday, and then Wednesday would be I'll talk about that in a minute, but that would be our live meetings and instruction day. But we wanted to be able to get both groups in as soon as possible, so we split it up like that. A would meet on Monday and Thursday, B would meet on Tuesday and Friday. And when the youngsters are in there with their teachers, then they can take home books and other materials that they would use while they're doing their remote learning time. So there would be 4 days of instruction, and on Wednesdays, students would participate in remote activities. This is the opportunity for the peer-to-peer activities where kids can get together and interact with their friends and their peers. We would also do that would be a great time for our class meetings, for our advisories, and for instruction. We know that some of our youngsters require additional instruction in certain areas. So we want to be able to use Wednesday as a day to be able to do that. In addition, we still have concerns, and we still must set aside time for our teachers, because they have team meetings, they have meetings with their principals, they may have meetings with parents, and they also need time for their planning and check-ins with kids and families. So Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday would be instruction days. Wednesday would be the day that we would use for a variety of different activities. Also on Wednesday, we would do a deep cleaning of the building. We know that kids are in a couple of days, clean the building, then we'd have a couple more days of youngsters in the building, and then clean again on the weekend. We also want to make sure that those students that are at risk or vulnerable have an opportunity to attend more than just on the AB day. If they are receiving specialized instruction and they have required time in their plan, their individual plans, then we will be providing them additional time outside of and in addition to their group A or B day. And the notification as to what group the youngsters will be in will be communicated to the parents by our building administrators. So my last slide before I hand it off to Donna is I would ask the board to consider moving the start date for students to September 8th, which is the day after Labor Day. In order to provide our staff with time to prepare for our opening models. Remember, they're preparing for all 3 models again, so that they can quickly pivot to whatever is needed at that particular time. In addition, last week, the governor issued in part of his order that the teachers and the staff would be given 3 additional days for preparation. So we were scheduled to bring our teachers back on the 26th of August. And so there's 2 days there, and then we take 3 more days the following week. There's some long weekends in there. And so we would provide kids with the opportunity to come back September 8th, the day after Labor Day. One other thing that must be done before the students return, and that's the professional development time. We have legal responsibilities to provide professional development annually to our teachers, discussing all the safety protocols and procedures on required areas, including reporting, harassment, bullying, and suicide prevention. So this is also the time that the district would use to prepare the teachers for the new year. I think the next slide says questions, if I'm right. So we thought, Barb, we thought when I'm done, then we would have questions and then go
Yeah.
on to the next session. Does that
Yeah,
work for you?
that's good. And I'm going to instill my classroom management skills here and make believe that we're all 7 and want to go out for recess. So I would like us to focus on just what we've heard so far and questions and suggestions just for these 3 specific things. So for example, a thought that I have with the remote learning piece is that if we decide to be fully remote, there may be students that need a place to access remote learning. And so while that's not necessarily a hybrid model, because even if you're in a school building, you're still learning on your computer or your device remotely, but you're doing it there. It's just, I've seen a couple of articles about it in some other districts. So that's a suggestion that I would put forth. Tom Croto, I see that you have your hand up. So why don't you go next?
Thank you, Bob. So I just want to go back to the very first slide. So the 3 models that we're talking about, fully remote, fully in person, or a combination or a hybrid. When I first read that, I wondered if it was going to be a choice for parents of one of those 3. But as I'm listening and I'm hearing right now, it's going to be a decision that someone is going to make in the administration. And tell me how that works. And as we get closer, I know that we're talking about being able to pivot. And I think that's a great idea to be, to be ready to pivot no matter what, because we know that things are going to change. They've been changing for weeks. But what are we going to start with? And help me understand, where we're going to go first and depending on what. Thanks.
That's a great question, Tom. Thank you for asking. We haven't decided what particular model we're going to start the year off with. We're going to, and you'll see throughout this presentation, that we're going to continue to seek input until we get to the August 3rd meeting with the board. But I want to be clear that there is an element of choice here. Parent decides that in the best interests of their child, they're going to remote learn. They're going to do their learning remotely. So we're going to honor that, Tom. We're going to make sure that we have in place staff that will provide that remote learning for that particular class, grade level, however that work plays out. So in essence, you do have choice. We want as many youngsters, if we open, we want as many to come back as possible. But we believe, based on all the input that we've received, that not everyone is going to come back. We already know that. We think it's going to be somewhere around 20%. And so we need to, that's a parental choice. And as long as they're remote learning and they're in attendance to that, then that counts as their school day. So we hope, though, that by August 3rd, based on our forums that we'll have next week with our families, that we'll get closer and closer to the model. There's no question that the hybrid model is one that we are leaning towards because it offers both, and it allows us to interact with kids and teachers to interact with their students. And yet we can get to everybody and still honor the rules that CDC has laid out for us, the distancing and all of the other pieces. Does that help, Tom?
It really does. And I just wanted to follow up with, just to be crystal clear.
Yep.
So if the district moves toward a combination or a hybrid model, if they do, and a parent says, you know what, my child really is successful at fully remote learning. I have other health reasons that I don't want him or her to be there. Can I do that? The answer is probably going to be yes.
Yes, okay. You are correct.
And I don't want to say that anything is written in stone right now, because I know that for you folks and for us, everything's changing all the time, and we may have to go back on something. But for now, that's the way it stands. And thank you very much. That's exactly what I was hoping to hear. Thank you.
You brought up a great point, though. We had some great stories about how successful some of our youngsters were in the remote learning environment. And maybe they have a situation at home that, prevents them from having face-to-face. And if they're successful and the parent thinks that works for them, then, we want to honor that, Tom. We want to honor that.
So Kathleen, it's Chuck. How are you?
I'm good, Chuck. How are you?
I would have raised my hand, but my hand won't go up. So I
Okay,
try
so
to follow the rules, but
okay. So there are 4 people ahead of you, so I'm going to give an order, Chuck, and
I
then you'll know
apologize.
when it's your turn. It's okay. So
Just
we'll
let me
go.
know. Thank you. I
Yeah,
apologize.
well, so we'll go Danielle, Gina, Jenny, Jim, Chuck. Y'all got that now? So Danielle, you're next.
Thank you. I had a question about the hybrid model. If a student is in the A group, for example, what would they be doing on Tuesday when they're not in school? Would they have assignments that were given to them on Monday, or would they still have access to what was happening in the class on Tuesday? I just was kind of wondering what happens on that off day when they're not in class.
Well, the class on Tuesday would be repetitive of what happened on Monday, because remember, that's splitting the group. So if you have 20 kids, 20 youngsters, 10 of them would be on Monday, right? And the other 10 on Tuesday. So the lessons would be the same. What they will get on the remote day is lessons posted in Google Classroom. They could have we will still use our educational associates to help us. That may be a day when they may have some additional reading work. They may have all of the other pieces that the youngsters have, for instance, art and music and some of their specials. So all of those things would happen on their off days remotely. So the schedule will depend on the lessons that the teachers prepare for those days when they're not there.
Okay, thank you.
I don't know who was next.
I think it was Gina.
Was it? I thought it was someone else, but so I have a question on the remote as well as a question on the hybrid. But let me start with the hybrid first, because it's a lot easier question. If the teacher is repeating the same lesson for group A on Monday and group B on Tuesday, are we then only going to get through half the curriculum in the year because we're repeating 2 days a week? So
That's
we're
a great
half the curriculum.
That's a great question, Gina. I'm gonna interject. Sorry, Kathleen, it's Donna.
No, go ahead.
Just
Donna.
because I want to say we have a team of people looking at this very question. We're not going to go detailed into that model tonight, but we have people working very specifically because our goal is to attend to those competencies, those grade level and course competencies that are our expectations for the year. And so there's going to be some very careful thought given to how those days pivot between one to the other. There are some very, very creative ideas being formulated in that regard. And I don't want to jumpstart that right this minute, because I want to give them a chance to speak further about those things in detail. But those teams are still working. They're working through this week and early next week. And at the big meeting in the board meeting in August, you're going to hear very much more detail on that's coming out. But it's very much what we're thinking. It's a really good question, because we don't want to end up just doing half the work. And people have some really creative ideas about how to make that work.
Thanks. The other question I had about full remote model is, I guess I don't understand why all the instruction is not synchronous.
Well, and when you describe synchronous, what do you mean? I mean, the teachers, yeah, they are, but it's very clear that the remote learning to do 7 hours or 6 hours of synchronous teaching and learning is almost impossible for people to do. I mean, even as a classroom teacher, that you teach a lesson And then you might work individually with a youngster. You don't necessarily work with all of the students at the same time. You might work off to the side with a small group or a one-on-one with a student needing extra help. I think that it's difficult to be able to do that, Gina, throughout the entire day. The studies have shown that it's almost impossible to be online for 6 hours providing that support for youngsters.
Okay, I guess I would say I would challenge that because one, I've seen it work from the student's perspective, and two, I've seen it done from the teacher/professor's perspective. So I guess that's a question I'll hold on to.
Hold on to it, and some of the teachers have been working on that. And what would a day look like? Remember in my earlier comments, I said we wanted to have a schedule, right? So that everybody knew what was going to happen. When was math going to be? When was English, social studies, science, the core subjects, right?
Right,
So,
but also when is prep? When is, when are quote unquote office hours? Exactly. Yes.
Yeah, so we're developing a schedule so that so obviously the staff, but also the youngsters know, as well as the parents, so that they can make sure that, okay, it's time for your English lesson or whatever. So, but go ahead.
I'm sorry, this is Barb. I'm going to pipe in for a minute. So I was a teacher all spring at Capital City Charter School, and we had what Dina and I spent an entire afternoon in my yard discussing all this one day. And so we had synchronous learning, and granted, now I had a school of 30 kids, so it's not, hundreds of kids, but every day had a live element. It had instruction and questions and answers. And then I would mute everybody. I would mute myself and let them just visit. So they had a little bit of social time in class. And all of these Microsoft Teams and Zoom and all of these things can facilitate where everyone's doing it together. And I think I know that was a concern in our conversation, is that, some teachers were just assigning a week's worth of work and others were coming on every day. I will say, Gina, in what I've looked at and the research I've done with my other teacher friends, the online learning in the spring was like a Band-Aid to a disaster. And if we're fully remote, I truly believe there's no way we can't do it synchronously. We have to have a consistent time together.
Yeah, well, I want to emphasize that was clearly something that the parents recommended, the students recommended, and our teachers. But they needed more training. They needed to understand more tools, software, things that they could use in their classroom, and they've been doing that. They've been learning all of those elements so that they can do more FaceTime with the kids. All I'm saying is that it won't look like a typical day where the youngster comes in at 8 o'clock and then they leave at 3:10 or whatever. I think you have to realize that there is going to be instruction. There's going to be student activity time to work on the particular activity that was assigned, and then some assessment and follow up at the end. And as you suggested, Barb, time for the kids to be with their peers.
Exactly. And I also do not mean to in any way criticize the teachers. I think they did an amazing job with the pivot that we had to do literally overnight. Right. So I don't mean that in any sense. There are ways to make it synchronous totally, but that doesn't mean that the teacher is always talking or always instructing.
Right. I mean, we have educational associates and tutors that could be doing work with the youngsters during that time, so that it doesn't necessarily have to be the classroom teacher always delivering every piece of every part of the instruction. So
exactly, because Zoom has breakout rooms.
They're great.
Trouble with whatever. So I'm going to be quiet now.
Your comments are excellent.
Okay, so I think next is Jenny, and then Jim, and then Chuck, and then Dave has his hand up now. So Dave, you're on the bottom of the list right now. So Jenny, let's hear it.
I think Jim was actually first, so I'll see Jim and then I'll go after. But thank you.
Oh, thank you. It doesn't really matter. We'll all get our questions answered. I want to go back. Tom mentioned about the fact that we'll have parents who will say, hey, you're doing a hybrid system, but I would want fully remote for my child, and we would accommodate that. So my question is, I'm a parent who says, I want full attendance for my child because that's the way they will do it, and I don't believe anyone is really at risk. How will you answer them? And you don't have to answer that right now because that may be something we need to think about. But then the other thing is, what are the parameters that we're going to set up? And maybe you haven't thought about this yet either, but I'll let it go. Is as I start my child fully remote and then 8 weeks in realize this is not working, I'm coming to school. And we now have to worry about space in a hybrid situation with limited classrooms and pre-assigned desks and things like that. So I guess I'm curious how we will allow that. I know some school districts are, once you sign up, you're there for the semester, but I don't know what we have done. And then finally, if you're in a hybrid program, but a parent is still a little nervous, can the student come in for just the core classes and take, health and PE and some of the other ones by an alternative method or a VLAX method? So that's my big long-winded question. Thank you.
So I'm not sure that we have answers to all those questions, Jim. I think they're great questions, and the question about parents want to fully in person. I'm not. At some point, there's some reality here that we can't be all things to all people. I wished we could. But that's not going to be possible. There are districts that are saying we're either in or we're out, and I think what we're trying to do is meet halfway. But honestly, I think that that's a question we'll toss around in our meetings and see what comes out of it. The youngsters who want to return after 8 weeks, I mean, we're going to have the same situation when a student registers in November and is new to the Concord School District and registers to come to school. So we're going to be faced with that. So we're going to have to look at enrollment. We'll have to look at enrollment where there's a seat that would be appropriate for that youngster. And it may be may not be necessarily in their neighborhood school if the seat is available in another school. But again, I wrote that down because I think we need to work through that also. I also have had parents who have asked, could I just come in for certain subjects? They didn't want to come in for everything, but they wanted to come in for just certain things. And again, because of the issues around social distancing and the numbers of students that we can have in a classroom, we're going to have to look at that very carefully. And we may or may not be able to accommodate everyone. But again, I think the reality is, as much as I want to be able to meet the needs of every single youngster in this district because of COVID-19, I'm not sure that any district would be able to do that, Jim.
No, I agree. First of all, let me clarify. I am not that parent who believes that this is a hoax or that my kid is immune and any of that. I want us to be prepared with having considered the request and have an answer. And I want it to be a health-based answer, one that's based in science and represents reflects the concern for the health of all of the students that are both in school and out of school. So I want us to be as thorough as we can in thinking through these questions, because these are questions people have asked me. And I want to be able to give them really good answers. And I want those answers to be based in health science and what's appropriate for the buildings we have, the air handling conditioners that we have. I'll know Matt's coming up next.
He's coming up,
but I want us to be able to make our decisions in that manner, and that's just why I posed the question. So thank you for writing them down and considering them.
That's great. Thank you, Jim.
Thanks, Jim. Those were awesome questions. I also think we may end up seeing students that enroll for the hybrid and after 8 weeks say, you know what, I'm out of here. I want to go home. So maybe I would predict a bit of a balance there. In listening to your concern about students deciding they wanted to come, we might end up getting the other side as well. Anyway, Jenny, you're next.
Yep, thank you, Barb, and thank you, Jim. And my questions, in some ways, are similar to Jim's. I think they're a little different. They may also not have answers, but I'll throw them out there. One question talking about a situation where a parent requests fully remote learning. I was wondering whether in that event, would that student be assigned to an actual classroom of students that had some in-person component, or would they be assigned to a class of students at their grade level who were all remote? And, you know, Kathleen, you mentioned the neighborhood schools, and you know, I know when we built the new elementary schools, our focus was on making sure that every student could attend their neighborhood school.
Sure.
So I think that question about the remote, would that aggregate students who might not otherwise have been aggregated into a single remote class, or would they be with their peers who had been in their school last year?
Yeah. It's going to depend. So if I'm a fourth grader and I'm remote, right? I'm in remote learning, and I have a teacher who is not able to come back for reasons, you know, medical reasons or situations. We want to be able to assign the fourth graders to that teacher, right? So it may cross a school. Her class may be made up of several youngsters from one of the 4 elementary schools. So 5 elementary schools, four, I'm sorry. So you know what I'm saying? You just, you know, I think we're looking at that. That's kind of in the weeds for us to make sure that we match up remote learners with a remote teacher.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think, you know, we don't have questions now. I mean, we don't have answers to these questions now, but they are going to be important. And I think that, Kathleen, what you said a minute ago about the fact that parents and students may have more flexibility at an earlier stage, but that we can't have a model that is infinitely complex and allows infinite permutations. At some point, it will have to, as you said, have a, you know, a stable class structure, that there may be a modification if somebody moves in or out, or there's really a unique situation, but it won't be possible to just change for everybody to be changing all the time. I think that's that would just be too hard. The other question that I had was whether there is a possibility that the model that's selected would vary by grade level. And again, it might be tied to the science. For instance, the science seems to support that younger students are less likely to contract or, you know, infect others with COVID-19. Might there be some consideration given to more in-person for the elementary, for instance, than for the high school based on scientific factors? And I was just wondering whether that was something that had been discussed.
Donna, that was probably discussed by some committees, right, on that you dealt with?
Well, there have been discussions about a variety of models. When we looked at the hybrid model, there are models that involve bringing in just small groups of kids or certain kinds of students. There are models that involve starting with the younger kids and spreading them out across the entire district. In other words, having them go potentially to the high school or the middle so they can spread further. And then there are the models that we're talking about where everyone is coming in these A-B sort of approaches. And we settled on this A-B approach. Although the science, I understand that we didn't think that that was the direction we wanted to go at this particular time. We want to try to bring everybody in for some period of time.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Donna. That was, you know, that level of thinking is important. I do think as this goes along, and this is just me interjecting again because I'm the chair and I can, I do think that the needs of a 5-year-old are vastly different from the needs of a 16-year-old, and that we may find that we have our 3 models won't be remote, I mean, you know, a little bit of both or full in. They may be our elementary model, our middle school model, and our high school model. You know, just given the way the information is changing all the time. But I love the fact that in all of these conversations, it's all being considered. So I'm just giving my appreciation here. Chuck Crush, you are next. Thank you for being so patient and waiting. Is Chuck still here? Maybe he's having a
Remind
mute
him-
issue.
Remind him
I'm
to.
sorry, I
unmute.
was on mute. Can you hear me
Okay.
now?
Yes,
Yeah.
we can. Go for it.
All
It's your turn.
Thank you. I was muted. Going back to the beginning about the forms for parents. So both of those are going to be prior to the August board meeting where we vote, correct?
The forum that we want to hold is on, I think it's July 30th. And that will be before your board meeting. And then we will have your board meeting where obviously there's time in that meeting for input from the community. You have that built into your agendas, so we know that we'll have feedback there. Once you review the plan, you have, condensed all the information and support whatever our recommendations are, I hope, that we will then go back out again to the community with the plan. I think they've had ample through surveys and emails to be able to share their thinking with us. They're hearing it in some cases for the first time tonight. So we want to get back with a forum at the end of the month so that we can do that.
So we're going to have a forum after we vote. Is that what I'm understanding?
Another one, yes.
But will there be the ability after we vote? How are we going to amend the plan based on information from that second forum?
Well, that second forum is really the forum to actually present the plan and inform the public. One of the ways in our communication plan, you'll see that at the end of the presentation, we have a plan for communication. That second one, Chuck, is for informing the public.
Okay, so we're given two opportunities for parents to provide feedback at the next or the 30th, and then at the school board meeting, the August school board meeting, where we have an objective to vote that night.
Right.
Right. So I think given it, and I hear what you're saying, we've done the surveys. I hear what you were saying that parents have had the opportunity, but given something of this magnitude, and given something that we're asking parents to make decisions that will not only affect the child's life, it's going to affect their life. I mean, people's livelihoods, whether they go remote, whether they do the hybrid, whether they're, full in or whatever, parents are going to need to probably make arrangements. I would encourage or kind of strongly recommend that I think we need to have an additional forum before we vote. I think there needs to be more opportunity for public comment. We're not allowing public comment tonight, which is a bit unusual, but I understand it's a lot of information. With that said, I definitely think we need to have some more opportunities for parents. I mean, look, I know they email and we have technology, but I don't think in this situation we can give too many opportunities to hear from parents prior to voting. So that's the first thing I have to say. The second thing I have to ask about is a couple questions. One is, as far as the remote model, has any thought been given to, under that model, or any of the models for that matter, students or services being provided to students in their home or wherever? For example, would a physical therapist, an occupational therapist, go into the student's home? Would a ed assistant, and I'm just throwing that out there to see if was there any discussion about that? Would a social worker? I mean, we talk about our most vulnerable, and that provision, and that being one of our goals. Has there been any conversation around those?
I can't answer that question with any specific answer. So I don't know, but I will find out. I was just look
curious,
into that in providing those specialized services to our youngsters. So
right.
I will look into it.
Yeah. That was one question, and I guess I know later on we're going to get into talking. I think Matt's going to come up, and we'll probably talk about PPE and cleaning and all kinds of fun stuff.
Right.
I'm just trying to see if I have any other questions related to the presentation. Just the provisions of choice, back to that, and great job on providing for provisions of choice for the parents. So whatever model we go with, so I want to let the district know that I'm going with remote learning or the hybrid. What's the process? Or, do you reach out to the school administrator, the building administrator? Do you reach out to the central office? Has that been developed yet, the process?
We haven't formally developed that. We've received a sense of that by the last survey, and Donna will show you that results towards the end when we get down to the end. But we have a sense of what it is percentage-wise, but the particulars we'll work with our building administrators to help us with that information, because that's going to be very specific, student to student. So we know who's in the classrooms, we know who the teachers are. We have to identify all that.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Chuck. So, Barb, do we get all the questions answered? So I could.
No.
Okay.
No.
I think Dave still has questions.
David
Okay.
Parker, and I think Jim's hand is up again.
Okay.
But I would like to encourage, this is just part one of 2 or 3 people that need to speak now. So Dave, ask your question. Jim, if it's pressing, please ask away. If not, let's move into the next piece so we can get all the information before the clock strikes 12. So David.
Yeah, thank you. First of all, I as a lifelong educator, I think that this is probably the biggest curveball I've seen to throw at our industry ever. I think I do have some perspective though. And one is that I feel like we have to, if we're going to make decisions, we have to agree to certain assumptions. And some of the assumptions may be slightly flawed, which is, in-face teaching is better than remote teaching. That teachers use 60 minutes of every class when they're in person, but in remote it's overwhelming, in that they can't teach for 45 minutes and then chill for a few minutes. I find that the most important piece for me in trying to work through this for my own school is from what I've learned in the past and what I can hope for in the future. And the first is to make sure that we have masks, that we're socially distancing, and that we are ventilating where we're teaching. But this past spring, within a day, we used the same schedule with the same teachers, with the same program. And we learned some things along the way. We learned that people were really working hard, really hard. And we had to say, okay, Wednesday's an alternative day for recreation. You guys are spent, because generally when you're teaching a classroom, you have some breaks, et cetera, et cetera. But the idea that we have to break these things up to 2 days here, 2 days there, just doesn't resonate with me, because, you can teach remotely. We have so many examples. Professional development, we go to conferences remotely now. You can learn very well. Now, granted, our classes were smaller, but you can do that and take the appropriate breaks and be really successful in terms of teaching and learning and maintaining relationships. So I think the premise that, that not having a physical presence is a detriment is true, but in certain ways, but not in other ways. I mean, we're working very hard to have people come so that they can see each other. I mean, the social learning and the social growth and the camaraderie that kids draw from each other is critical. And to deprive them of that is really painful. On the other hand, instructional modalities are really highly functional for remote learning. Highly functional. And as long as you pay attention to where your burnout is, how long you can last, it seems to me that that's a wonderful option given our situation where it is. 85% of our people really liked it, and it worked well. And so I think we work on a certain premise and make it really, really complicated. And as hard as this is, and as complicated as it really is, I think we sometimes have to look at the premises we're functioning with. And online learning is not it's not, remote learning is not remote learning, it's learning. In-person learning is learning. How are we going to learn and get through this? And so, we were able to teach art online, we were able to teach PE online, you're able to teach shop online, you can do it. But taking time away from the classroom with the teachers, to me, is not the right way to do it.
David, I'm gonna.
I'm on the, I look at things differently. Thank you.
David, I understand every word you say because my brother teaches at your school, and I was privy to really how successful you were. Now, for the public, David's school is middle school and high school. So I teach at a charter school, and one of my students is one of 6 children: kindergartner at St. John's, a first grader and a fourth grader at Strong Foundations, a 7th grader with me, a high school junior at Granite State Arts Academy. That one mother had 4 daughters at 3 different schools, 5 daughters at 4 different schools, and she had to facilitate that all day long. So the middle schooler and the high schooler were fine. I had my middle school girl, and her high school daughter was independent, but she had 3 primary grade children that she had to facilitate. So this, I'm just going to go back to, I think our 3 plans are elementary, middle, and high school, and they're going to look very different because that poor mother, and she's a experienced homeschool mother, and she's actually choosing to homeschool her kids this year, which I don't blame her. But as much as we need to absolutely think about everything you just said, the mother that's listening to this with 5 children, some are 5 and some are 16, is going to be overwhelmed by it.
Well,
so
okay. I don't disagree with you there, and I think
No.
there are exceptions, but I want to make sure we're functioning from legitimate, perspective, and are we really, working from the same place? I mean,
Right.
Our assumptions need to be accurate.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, and that, right.
I mean,
Right,
just
right.
bring a perspective on it, because
Yep.
thank you very much. And I like the hybrid model. I think we had a kid, I'll end with this. 5 years ago, we had a kid that had an autoimmune deficiency. He was in a tent. He joined his classes every day because we opened up a computer and had the camera on. Mm-hmm. And he's now a junior with us, looking to go to college, doing incredibly well.
I remember this.
So if you remember, and so I think we can do a hybrid model. You can have half the people outside of the class, half the people in the class. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, David.
Thank you,
Gina,
David.
do you have another question, or is your hand just still up from before?
No, I just have a really quick comment, not even a question.
All right, so Gina and then Jim, and then we'll move on to the next speaker.
Okay, so when we propose to move the start date to give the staff time to prepare the strategies, I do not in any way, shape, or form approve of taking those days away from teacher preparation and using them as professional development. Professional development days are scheduled otherwise, but if you're going to give the teachers days to prepare, then we need to make those days sacred for those teachers to be able to prepare.
Thank you, Gina. All right, Jim.
You know what? Let's just move on. Let's get to the next part, Barb. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Kathleen, carry us forward. Who's next?
Oh, great. Thank you. Donna's going to do a piece on social emotional learning.
Okay.
Great. Thank you, Donna.
You're welcome, and I'll move quickly. There's a lot of information here. I know you've had a chance to take a look at it. So a priority as we return, whether it's remotely or in some other manner, will be the attention to our social emotional well-being, our students' social emotional well-being, and our staff's. We've had 6 months of living in a pandemic. We understand that we have families and staff who've had loss, who are dealing with grief, who are experiencing anxiety, and even in the best of circumstances, we have plenty of individuals who need our support. So our teachers and our teams are looking at ways of enhancing the things we do anyways, that is build relationships in classroom communities, We have a lot more expectations if we are in person to work on, as well as in remote, in terms of those routines and procedures that we always look at in the first weeks of school. That will be a priority. We'll be looking at our transition events and looking to be creative about how we do those kinds of things. Kindergarten orientation. Kindergarten screening and orientation will happen in August, and we'll be reaching out to our new kindergarten students to make those arrangements. New students, transition years of grade 6 and 9, we will tend to, make those work well. We are looking at the structures that we have in place, as well as additional structures we'll need. Things like morning meetings, advisory programs that will be happening in person, whether we're in person or remotely. Various kinds of supports and services for our students will be hitting the ground with our MTSS systems. People have been talking about screening, implementing, of course, the Tier 1, the universal strategies that we do for all students, and an early rollout of our Tier 2 supports. That is our small groups and individual sorts of additional supports that we provide to students in need. Communication, working with partners, and we've been doing that all along. We've got great partners in our community, whether it's Riverbend or Waypoint or NAMI or others, that we're making sure that we are communicating back and forth, providing supported and facilitated referrals to families if they need them. So be preparing in that way. Collaboration strategies with our families. Allowing space for connection and healing among adults, whether we're remote or in school. Our world has been rocked, and teachers are feeling very, very anxious, and we totally understand that. It's simple things which aren't necessarily so simple, providing guidance to staff about how to talk to students about COVID-19. These are things that we have folks working on in the community. Monitoring, I think we mentioned this, attendance and engagement, and making sure that we're connecting, making every effort to find those students who are not engaging and connecting. There's a lot of professional development going on this summer. It will continue into the school year. And just as an aside, Gina, that was a great question. 2 of our days before school are always 1 or 2 days before school. This year, 2 are partly for PD. That's how we've established them, and that's how they are there already. And we're sort of adding 4 more days on. So just to help to balance that piece, because there is professional development that we would expect to do during that time. And then, of course, our home visiting and support for youngest children will continue. We just found out yesterday that we were given a grant with our partners at Waypoint and the Children's Place for a significant grant to continue that work, and going back to those students who've been identified as at risk. So lots of moving parts here. The good news is we have a fantastic team of individuals from across the district, preschool through high school, who are in the process of breaking into teams and working through these. Some of them are grades age 3 to high school issues, and some of them are worked at the school levels. I want to talk briefly about student services, which is an ongoing process to think about the needs of populations that may be vulnerable, that have been vulnerable during this period of time. Right now, our special education staff are reaching out to every family that has a student with an IEP and discussing their IEP needs. That's going on a one-to-one basis. That began a while ago and will continue across the summer. Those individual conversations are happening. We will have in-person services available for our vulnerable populations, barring any advice as we monitor the virus, but we anticipate and hope to have those services available in our buildings, as well as remote services. So we are looking to gear up for both of those. We're reaching out to our artist placements and charter schools for their information. We are working on the hard conversation about transportation. We'll talk later, but through our surveys about the parents in this community, many of whom are willing to transport their children, which is a great relief in some ways, if we are going back to school. Assessment has been a challenge during the emergency teaching period in the spring. We need to make a good gauge of our student learning loss during the school closure period, and so that our staff know where to begin. Those are things that can be done and will be done. We have teams working on that during the summer. And certainly within student services, we have, you'll hear from Matt about our PPE, but certainly we recognize that we have individuals across our district who will need additional PPE when and if they're working with students in person, and we are prepared and preparing to make that happen. We are going to make the decision that meeting with parents will be held remotely for the foreseeable future, mostly because we want to keep if we're back in school, we want to have as few people there as possible, and so we are going to have a no visitor policy. We'll continue to use translation services to communicate with families in their primary language. Our team of ELL staff at all are folks who have a different primary language than English, so that those families could participate in the survey work that we did recently, and we were able to they were able to speak to hundreds of families and bring that information back to us, which and they have done yeoman's work to make that happen. Certainly counseling and other social emotional supports will need to be made available and are available, and by the the support that the board and the community has provided for this coming up school year, we do have additional staff in clinical areas available to us, and this is no better time to have those people available. That was a lot. I'm sorry, I went quickly. Questions?
No, Donna, that was fantastic. So, you know, the other side of all of this is, so I was talking before the meeting started, you were there, and I was saying how the letters I've received from families, I have these compelling letters that say, please, please, please let me keep my child at home. We can't go back. And I finish the letter and I think, okay, I'm a fan of fully remote. And then I get a letter from a parent who's an hourly worker, going to lose their apartment, dropped out of high school, can't support the at-home learning for their child, has whatever, and I think, you know what, we have to send them back. And that's the other side of this. That's the children who are hungry, and the children who have special needs, and the children who are nonverbal, and the children that, you know, maybe aren't in a safe home. And so this piece to me is equally as important as how well we read and write and add and memorize, you know, state capitals and such. So I'm looking for hands up. So I see Gina. And then I see, it's not quite easy for me to see sometimes. And then I see Tom Croto. So Gina and then Tom, and then if there's more, we'll go from there.
Yeah, with respect to students with significantly high special needs, has thought been given to whether or not we need to outsource some of those services in the event to experts or professionals in our community in the event we do a hybrid or a full remote?
We have significant staff of our own. We also contract some of our services out, for instance, physical therapy and some of our behavioral supports. So we do already have some, and absolutely, if we need to find additional supports for students, we absolutely we know that there's some capacity there. We are working, for instance, with Riverbend. We're bringing additional supports in at the middle school level through a grant and a kind of a combination of a grant and some work in our own district budget and Riverbend's budget. So we definitely have the capacity to do that if we need to do that. And that's why it's so critical that the members of our special ed team this summer are literally speaking to every single family to make sure we understand where those families are and what the needs are going to be.
Thank you, Donna. Tom Croto.
Thank you, Bob. So Donna, thank you. Regarding your second slide in your first bullet, strategies for working with all families, developing, maintaining close connections, that is probably clearly one of the most important things that I think is being presented here tonight, in that I think that when we did the remote learning in March, it was sort of, we had to do it. It was thrust on us and we just did it. And I don't think that it went as well as everybody thought it did. I don't mean just for Concord School District, I mean for the entire state. So we learned a lot. And I know you know that you've learned a lot, and I know Kathleen and everyone else feels the same way. One of the key components, and this is where I'm going with this question, what are the strategies, or have you begun to develop those strategies yet to really communicate with parents so that they can say, hold on, we're 4 weeks into this and this is not working for my child. We're 3 weeks into this and it's not going this way or that way. How are we actually going to do that?
Right. And Kathleen's going to speak about some communication strategies, but there's been conversation about this for sure. And there's as many strategies as there are people out there. So for instance, having one-on-one conversations like we're having in special education, or that we're having in ELL, having regular opportunities through our administrators to do those kind of newsletters that some people can access. There's conversations about videos that will be developed to help people understand some basic things. We also are talking about having family forums. So there's opportunities for people to not just to learn this initial piece, but to be able to, have the equivalent of a family night or a family, and it could be on Zoom when those things happen at the school levels. And so I think there's a variety of ways to have those happen. And I think there's so many different ways that people need it to happen, that part of it is listening to families and understanding what makes sense for them and what is going to work for them to get their point of view to us. We just need to have those families close to us so they can be constantly providing us with that information. And right now we do have a number of parents who are working with us on these teams, and a number who aren't in the teams but have said, I'm here to bounce things off of. We're going to have conversations. And so it's all of the above. I do believe there will be a laundry list of strategies that we will implement, and some of it will be based on levels, and some of it will be across the board.
I think that having the list of strategies is a great idea, but I think the actual ways of putting them into progress and just trying to figure out how are we going to do it on an accountability basis so that we are so that we're actually accomplishing is going to be the task for the administration, of course.
Right.
And I had a great follow-up to that. Oh, I know what it is. We need to be able to give teachers and all staff, but particularly teachers, that same opportunity. And I think that should be built into to the culture of the schools for every one of the days that staff are available, that they always have the opportunity to come and say, you know what, this sounds like a great idea, but it's just not working. I think if we tweak it this way, it's going to work even better. We need to be able to encourage our administrators, which I know they always try to do, but it's got to be on somebody's calendar to do it weekly, at least, to say, what are the parents thinking? What are the teachers thinking? And how are we doing? Thanks.
Absolutely. That is so right. There's been some conversation about setting regular dates, literally monthly dates that we are checking on how we're doing. Not to mention all the things that are happening during the month, but that there are actual dates that we're going to stop and say, how are we doing? Parents, how are we doing? Staff, how are we doing? Students, how are we doing? And there's a thought to actually pick those dates and have check-in moments that have data behind them.
Good. And I would love it if you would share those with the board when you get those done. Thank you.
Hey, Donna, it's me, Barb. I was looking at your list here, and another piece I want to pull into the conversation, and given all the other traumas our district has had, we have people at the police station. So I think about children that are in unsafe homes or potential abuse situations, or not being fed, or suffering the consequences of drug-addicted parents and such. And I think in looking at some of our training around how to service those kids, because we don't see them, the people at the police station are very willing to do well child checks. I made several phone calls this spring myself, just to say, hey, would you drive by and check out? And here's why. And the support was phenomenal. And I think it's an important piece of the conversation. I know uncomfortable subjects are often difficult to talk about, but these students as well. And this is in looking at resources that can help us as a district. I hope that we're including the police and social workers and that level of our community support in addressing these needs of our students.
Yeah, there's no doubt that this keeps us up at night, keeps me up at night. The
Yeah.
risk benefit situation between COVID and kids who are home. We know that about that by March last year, we made probably 250 to 300 phone calls to DCYF, and we continue to do that during the remote time, but not nearly as many because we didn't have quite as much information. And so we know that we are connected closely with DCYF and the police. DCYF and the police are connected to each other as well. You're absolutely correct.
Yep. Yeah, I know. I have a couple of families, and it was usually every 2 weeks or so I needed to make a call. So during the whole spring, every 2 weeks, I just made the call because even though I didn't have it, I couldn't see anything. I would, it was that better safe than sorry kind of idea. So, okay, so this is.
I have a question, Barb. I'm raising my hand.
I see you, Chuck. I see you. Go for it, sweetie.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
Having technical challenges. As far as students with IEPs and 504s, Donna, you had said that you guys are reaching out over the summer. I guess my question is that being done on a systematic basis, and who's doing that, and what data is being kept? And the second part of my question is, for the IEPs and the 504s that are not able to be met, I mean, certain goals are not being met or implemented the same way as these meetings come up in the coming year, the coming semester. Are we going to be amending? What's the plan to achieve those goals of an IEP in a remote or hybrid or whatever model we go with?
That's a great question, Chuck. Yes, it's being done in a very systematic way. That is, there are rosters at every school, at every level of every child, and the administrators of special education in those levels are responsible for those, and they have many of their staff working with them. And those meetings are happening, literally probably every day. Bob Elmon is overseeing that, and they are all special education meetings. They are all provided, notes are taken at all of the meetings and are included in the students' special education files. And if IEPs need to be adjusted, they are being adjusted. And I suspect over time, even if you had a conversation in July, you might need to have another conversation in October because things are going to change. And you may think you're going to do certain things, and then you may realize this is really not the way we're going to make this happen. There's also the potential for compensatory services to be provided if they need to be provided. And it is difficult if we're not all back to be able to do that. Some of those things may not happen right away. Some of those things may continue into, in the future. So they're quite individualized, but it's quite systematic.
Okay, so I'm understanding correctly. So minutes are being kept for these meetings, and it's going into child's educational file, and it's part of the IEP, these calls, and is it kind of planning for the coming year? Is that what I'm understanding?
Yes, it's discussing those areas that parents have concerns about that may or may not be being met in their IEPs, any adjustments that need to be made, and any compensatory services that need to be looked at or considered.
Gotcha. And are you having good participation with parents? I mean, I'm sure it's a challenge getting in touch with some parents and things of that nature.
I think so. We can get you more information. There's a meeting again tomorrow. They meet every week on Thursday mornings to go over their progress on that. But I know the meetings are happening all the time, and I'm sure I'm sure as anything, there's some that it takes a bit longer to make sure it's all arranged. But they seem pretty dogged in their work.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So Barb, are there any more questions, Barb, for Donna?
Ooh, have we lost Barb?
Yeah.
No.
Okay. Are there any more questions for Donna?
No, I think unless there are, I think that was excellent. I'm having trouble with my mute button. I hit it and it goes on and off like 5 times while I look at it. So no, Donna, thank you so much. These are the best black and white, and we all know gray is the truth in life. So anyway, all right. So who's next?
We're going to talk about technology next, and I asked the director for the technology department, Pam McLeod, to speak on these issues. So Pam, you're with us. I know you are there somewhere.
Hi, everybody.
Hi, Pam. Thank you. Go ahead.
Donna, can you advance the slide for me?
I'm sorry, yes,
Thank you.
sleeping on the job.
So in Concord, fortunately, as you all know, we are one-to-one already in grades 1 through 12. So I don't think this remote learning was as much as of a hit for us as it was in many other districts device-wise. We are going to supplement devices so that each of our kindergartners has an iPad to take home as well. So other than that, as far as devices go, it's pretty much just our standard refresh. We've budgeted this year for new devices at the high school, for example, but that's not specific to remote learning. That's just part of our normal operations. We are looking to add more devices for staff. We can't really expect our educational assistants to be at home assisting students without a device. So we're working on different funding sources and looking at each position and trying to determine what is necessary and getting devices for them as well. We've had to make some adjustments in terms of how we access some of our remote, our specialized applications, mostly at the high school. So they use some intense Adobe products, CAD products for some special classes, and those are in specialized labs with high-end hardware. So we've had to move those onto remote servers. We're going to have to pay for the server time for those servers to be operating, but that will mean the students will be able to access those applications in a browser on their Chromebooks. So that's something I think that would be great for remote access, but also later as they're trying to do homework as well in a quote normal year. We also had to work on deploying applications remotely. We've already had that capability for student devices, but for staff, we tended to rely on their laptops being on the district's network. So this summer we're working on, and we have a new system for really pushing out applications no matter where the laptop is. So that will help us make sure that things are consistent for staff members throughout the district. And we did, as you know, purchase laptops for every, for instance, admin assistant who needed to be able to work from home, and we did that last spring. We did pretty well with our phone system during COVID previously, but with our new phone system, which was already a work in progress, they'll no longer need to use the VPN to make phone calls. So they'll be able to use what's called a soft phone, which means that they have software on their computer which they can use as a phone with a headset and a smartphone app so that they can send and receive calls from the district's number so they're not using their personal phone numbers to make calls. We stood up a help desk when remote learning hit us in the spring. We'll continue that. So there's help available by telephone, by email, and by appointment in person at the district. Those things worked fairly well, I think. Not perfectly, but we've definitely learned from what we did this spring, and we're working on making some small improvements. Definitely looking at training for staff, students, and families. What were our common questions? What were our common concerns? What do we need to provide as far as video or group training for those different stakeholders? And we have a very small committee representing each of the grade levels. We're looking at exploring applications to augment staff to parent communications. So, we have school messenger, we have a website, we have social media, but do we need something like a Remind or something that just really strengthens our communication and makes it easier for parents to get information? Next slide, Donna. Thank you. We're working really hard on digital equity. This is a huge challenge, as you know. We are really fortunate that Comcast has made available a person who we can call, and she can give us help and really walk us through trying to get a family connected, some of the different challenges that come into internet access at home. I think we had most of our families connected by the end of last year, but we do need to get some more information and some more details about which families may still be having some issues, and we have a variety of solutions that we could look at. Comcast has a low-cost Internet Essentials program, which is about $10 a month. They are extending their free Internet Essentials program to new customers, but the free part is only for 2 months. And then after that, it reverts to the $10 per month. But they are waiving past debt for families that had debt maybe a year or so ago. So they're allowing that debt to be waived so that families can get the service. They've really been just amazingly helpful through this process. They also have a program where the district can pay for Internet Essentials. So if we end up going down that particular road, we're sort of talking about that at the district level to decide where we want to go there. I think one of our biggest struggles is home internet. I think many of the technical problems that both teachers and families are having have to do with home internet issues. So we try to give advice, but it's sort of troublesome to know how far to go in terms of supporting them when you don't feel comfortable sending technicians to their home. So I think we'll do some education for families about things like, you know, needing to be close to your router. I know the school board, you've all gone through this as we adjusted to remote meetings, how to optimize your home setup so that you could really have a good experience at home. So, you know, for example, the Comcast Internet Essentials program might be you know, sufficient for, say, 2 students at home with Chromebooks, but if mom or dad is also working on that connection or somebody streaming Netflix on that connection, then that may be a problem for students that are trying to learn. So there's some things we can control and some we can't, but this is really the bucket of issues that we're trying to be concerned about. Next slide, Donna. I think we're finished.
Yep,
Ready for questions. You're muted, Barb. I can't hear you, Barb.
Okay,
She's
finally.
trying. There you
I
are.
click it and click it and click it, and it just it flips me off. Is what it does. Anyway, so I see Jim's hand up right now. That's the only hand I see. So Pam, I want to, you know, I feel that it's, as someone that's so connected to all aspects of this district, I have to offer praise and support and thanks for the hard work and efforts. In my school, we use a program called ThinkWave, which combines communication, student grading, lesson, you know, it was a very easy thing. And so like Concord, we had an easy time of it. And it made me really, really happy to know how seamless some aspects of our online learning were. And that's because of the amazing technology. And Steve, I know you're on here and you are our technology person forever. And we have been a leader in this way for a long time. And little did we know it would be so important at this time. So Pam, thank you so much for all of it. It's appreciated on my end. So Jim, ask away, and please others, if you have questions, get your hand up so that we can ask them.
Okay, thank you, Barb. And Pam, thank you very much, and all of your staff for the rather extraordinary work we had to go through and do during the spring. A couple quick questions. One is, you got back a lot of the equipment that was used in the spring. How much of beating did it take, and do we have sufficient resources to be able to get additional equipment or put in what we need for the students coming into the fall? And then,
go ahead.
No, go ahead. You can do that first.
My summer crew is still going building by building, so they aren't quite finished with each building yet. So I don't really have statistics yet on the devices, but my sense is it's not too bad. And you know, we do have resources because we have insurance money that comes in through our Chromebook insurance program. So we self-fund the insurance program, and those funds become a pool for repairing devices. So we do have resources, as well as these federal CARES monies that are available to us.
Good.
So,
I'm sure you're in constant touch with Jack on the need for those resources. And then my other question is, our students are so good at technology these days, but our parents aren't always. We aren't always quite as good as they are. Will will we be reaching out to parents to give them some help desk access? And if so, will we have help desk access like in an evening or an off hour once in a while for parents who work?
Yeah, we really try to organize that through our school-based technology integrators, which are now called digital learning specialists, by the way. We all have to get used to new terminology. And we are so fortunate in Concord, and that's really, a large part through the hard work of the school board to have those positions because they're really our technology coaches for everybody in the district. So we have talked about organizing different resources for families. I'm sure that training nights could be a part of that. Parents do have full access to the help desk, so they can email us. It's help@sau8.org. It's a very easy email address to use, and they can also call our dedicated help desk support number for help. So that's been available this whole time.
So I'm going to interrupt, and then it's Gina's turn. So in all my years of coaching, when I was first teaching and coaching, there was no internet. So everything was hung on the fridge, the phone tree, the schedule. So I really do feel that a nice Concord School District magnet that goes on the fridge with every phone number and every resource that parents need would not be a waste of money, primarily because it's on the fridge. So no matter, and in my coaching now, although we have all this social media to communicate as coaches and athletes, I always print everything out. And at the bottom, I write, hang me on the fridge. So it's just a suggestion on my part. We have so many families that truly are not internet savvy. And when I think of our English language learners and those parents that don't speak English, so they have a magnet in their language with the phone numbers, and it goes on their fridge. They all have a fridge, and it might sound silly, but it's just a suggestion on my end that we can email messages, we can send a letter home, but a pretty little magnet, with all the numbers might just be a way to make sure that we can connect with our families. So, okay, Gina, your turn.
Barb, silly, but very effective.
Yeah. No, believe me, it's more effective than you think. So, and you hang me on the fridge, put me on the fridge at the bottom of the magnet, and then I know what to do. So, all right, Gina, your turn. Yep.
Just really quickly, I want to give really an ovation to the technology team, trying to coordinate this and pivot as quickly as we did, and try to get everybody up and going with all of the different languages, the different computing abilities, the different whatever. You guys were just amazing, and so. I don't want to take up a lot of time tonight. It's a long meeting, but I wanted to say congratulations. I think as far as technology goes, you guys did a fabulous job.
Thank you, Gina. And I have a great staff. It's really, we had 2 staff members who were in the office every single day during remote learning. And, they just really deserve a lot of credit for being there for families.
Hey, Barbara, it's Chuck. Can I ask a quick question?
Absolutely. Go ahead, sweetie.
Yeah, thank you. Pam, and I echo everyone else's thoughts in the great job you and your team have done. To that end, given the all the pressures put upon you, all the things that we need to do to help our parents with the help desk, perhaps even after hours, do you need more staff or more resources, either on a temporary, permanent basis? Is that something we need to consider as a school board?
Well, Jack just left the conversation, so I'm not sure it's fair to bring that up when he's not here. I think we might, and not, we're talking with, I'm talking with the district administration about what our needs may be in terms of not new staff, but maybe repurposing positions that we may have in the district that may no longer be appropriate with, under the situation. So
right. Yeah.
We have spent some funds and hired some hourly folks to help us really support the help desk. For instance, the help desk is open all summer. I hired somebody to staff that. We don't get a lot of traffic, but it's still there. And then she's doing some other work for us as well. So yeah, I think we do, but but we're still talking about the details of that.
Great. Please know you have my support. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so before we move forward with, I think we go to PPE and Matt Cashman next, so I'm not sure.
No, got a couple of other little things to do first.
Never mind. All right. So then carry on. I'm gonna step
All right,
back. It looks like
okay.
there are no more hands
All
up.
right.
Go for it, Kathleen. Thank you.
Yeah, we got a couple of quick things before we jump into operations with Matt, but I want to
Got
talk
it.
a little bit about assessment, and I will be very quick about it. This is fairly new. We were just informed by the commissioner that available will be testing and assessment in the fall. It's a screening assessment, really, that will be given to students in grades 4 through 8. It's a 30-minute screening, if you will, both in math and language arts. And we will be using that. And of course, the juniors will be taking the SATs in school in the fall. Now, that's all on the premise that we're in school, because if we're not in school, obviously that doesn't happen. But one of the things that is on everybody's mind is, how did our kids do during this remote learning? Where did regression occur? Are there areas that we really need to shore up and look at very carefully how the youngsters are doing, and making sure that they're meeting their grade level competencies? So this is just a tool that the Department of Ed has pushed out to us, and they're at no cost. And so we will move forward with that. I think the state wants to know also how the youngsters did across the state. So pretty simple, but this is important for our teachers because they need the data in order to analyze how our youngsters have done. Questions?
So I don't see any hands up right now.
Well, then we can, I mean, you're going to hear a lot more about that as we go along. So I'm going to jump in and ask Steve Rothenberg is with us tonight, and he's going to give us a brief update on the CRTC.
Good evening, everybody. Look, just to make this really concise, CRTC has a dilemma, and the dilemma we face is, aside from all the planning you're hearing tonight, we've got to add one more element to the mix. And the other element to the mix is that we have 8 sending schools that come to us. So picture this meeting 9 times, and then me out there attempting to figure out what these schools are doing, and then attempt to frame the CRTC program to serve the most number of kids possible. Obviously, our #1 priority is serving kids, but secondly, there's also a financial factor of the revenue associated with sending school students, and Jack is well aware of that. But all in all, we're framing it that the CRTC model, by and large, is going to struggle in 100% distance mode. We've got to find that balance, and we're trying to tap into flexibility to provide opportunities to kids to come in traditional ways, which could be every day in small groups, or in certain days we might take smaller groups for 3 hours. This summer we served about 100 kids through competency boot camps. We got a good taste of what it was going to be like in the building and how to run social distancing protocols. And what we saw was kids were dying to come back. I don't think that's a surprise to some folks. So we're looking to use technology. We're exploring how we can offer more to some students who might come. And if you noticed in the governor's report, there was a very small section on career and technical education. It didn't provide many structures, but it did mention something about coming to a school and being able to get served with other things besides CRTC classes, which isn't that realistic for us, except for the fact we do offer an English class. We've done it for years that supplements the CRTC programs. So we're out there. Tomorrow we have a 10:30 meeting with all our sending schools. We're just trying to adapt and roll with it, and be able to figure out a way that's like a common denominator structure to serve the most number of kids.
I couldn't get in.
I'm coming. All right, Steve, I want to comment. So being connected to so many of our sending schools through my charter school, and then just being me and knowing a million people, this has been a huge concern for all of your staff, which I'm sure does not surprise you. How do we balance the needs of every sending district? So I just want to take my hat off to you, because I think we're just thinking about us, and you're thinking about 9 communities. So I think there really isn't a wrong answer here. I think that your task is to, right, what you said, serve kids and teach kids, and however you feel that works. I can't judge it or question it really, because
Yeah.
I'm not at your desk.
An interesting part to this is a good example is Merrimack Valley, which sends us 150 kids, which is, a huge percentage of their junior and senior population at that school. They're a partner with us. They're not like a customer of ours because we have to provide services to those 150 kids because they don't have a backup plan. I don't mean that in a negative way. That's just a lot of bodies.
That's right.
And it's a huge piece of the program for Merrimack Valley students as well as Pembroke and Bow, et cetera. So I think our teachers are, what's hard is, and I'll wrap up on this note, when you're a CRC teacher and you're looking at Concord High School is forming a vision that you're going to hear about. Here's what's going to look like at Concord High. And CRTC could look different.
Right.
We may have an independent feel to us and dealing with dilemmas that are very unique because of the 9 schools. That one school may go all remote, but we may stay open CRTC for small groups. And I guess that's a good last message is that we may be a bit independent. We may not be following the same program as Concord High School. And I don't mean that in a gross way, but in a subtle way of how we run our day. We just might not be the same, and our teachers may have a different protocol. But I think everybody's at the table and everybody's willing to do it.
Right. Well, and I also, as chairperson of the instructional committee, would encourage our board to be supportive of what you feel is going to work for you, because I can't speak for Merrimack Valley School Board. I can't speak for Pembroke Academy School Board. But I think it's important for us to be open. And, back to my idea that we have models for grade levels, elementary isn't high school. So CRTC isn't Concord High, CRTC isn't Pembroke Academy. It's all of it. And so thank you for being willing to sort of step outside the box and see what might work for you.
Yeah, what would be great if the board just approved building me a brand new parking lot. That would be terrific. You guys tonight could just build a multi-story parking garage. Kids drive in, all my problems will be solved. Right, Kathy? Just like an Exeter.
Thank you very much, Steve.
Back away, Steve. Back away.
I guess, are there any questions?
I don't see any, not surprisingly.
All right. Well, thanks, Steve. And
my pleasure.
Yeah, appreciate it. I'm going to keep going, Barb. So
yeah, please do.
Yeah. So our next big piece is operational considerations, and we have a couple people going to speak to this. The first will be around cohort grouping. How do we keep the kids together? And Donna's going to speak to that, and then she's going to go right into Matt Cashman, who's going to get into all the building and facility stuff. So let's let it go. Donna, you all set? No, Donna? Donna, are you on mute?
How's that?
Okay, good. Very good.
Okay, good. Sorry about that.
Yeah, no,
all right,
thank you.
so the big thing here is cohort grouping. Some people are calling it podding up. But the whole, one of the largest concepts in terms of bringing students back, or even living in our community, is keeping kids in small groups as much as possible. Developing cohorts of students with limited cross-mixing between the groups. So a lot of our planning and thinking about the models we're trying to build out for going back to school involve how to keep kids in the smallest groups possible, as well as how to keep staff from being exposed in a limited way as possible. So so these are informing the work that we're doing. It looks very, very different from 3-year-olds up to 18-year-olds. So it will look different as we go through the levels, and we'll be hearing about that more at the August meeting. But to the extent possible, students will stay in the small groups with potentially teachers moving into the groups rather than the students moving. That becomes more difficult as you go up the grade levels, but it's still to some extent possible if people are looking at that. We know that we'll be assigning permanent seating in classrooms and on buses. It will be important to know where people have been sitting. If, God forbid, there's some issue and someone is exposed, then we'll know what that exposure is involved. And we'll also limit, to the best extent possible, student sharing of materials and supplies. We used CARES money to purchase individual art sets for all of our children in the elementary school, going up through into the middle school, some and also some at the high school. And these are beautiful materials that will be in a set. So a student will have their own set of crayons, their own set of markers, their own watercolor palette. And so they're not everybody putting their hands into that bucket of markers that you can imagine. So we've already, that's one example of what we've been doing. I'm going to move right into, well, I can take questions on this idea and happy to do that before Matt. Before Matt. Any questions on this concept?
Liza, go for it, sweetie.
Sure. Donna, I'm glad you brought up the potting concept. Thank you. And I don't need an answer to this now. I just want to make sure that we have the ability to create those pods based on existing pods in the community. So, for example, neighbor children who may already be spending time together, parents who are sharing nannies on the off days. Since kids are exposed, regardless of what we end up with, we're going to have a situation where kids are seeing each other both in school and outside of school. So if we can kind of piggyback on cohorts that have already been arranged, I think that would be really helpful. Thank you. And then unrelated, I just want to say, for the sake of anyone who's watching on TV, that I just want to repeat that there won't be any public comment tonight. But we really, really, really want your input and are happy to take that by email at concordinfo@sau8.org. concordinfo@sau8.org. So don't be shy about writing to us if you have something to say about what we're learning tonight. Thanks.
Thank you, Liza. I said that at the beginning of the meeting, but I'm quite sure comments we're being inundated. So thank you. That's important for people to know. That's why we're having the forums, and I've never not answered an email. So I think we're there for everyone. I don't see any other questions. So,
hey, Barbara, it's Chuck. I do have a question.
Chuck. Oh, then go for it.
Yeah, just two quick questions. One is, I want to echo what Liza said about the cohorts, about naturally occurring cohorts in the community. People are sharing nannies, friends that are spending time together. I think that's key for any cohorting plan. And you probably don't have an answer for this tonight, Donna. That's fine. But with the cohorting, has provisions, or will there be provisions for contact tracing involved as part of the cohorting plan?
So we're in the ability to understand what the state wants to do, and so they'll have a very specific plan in mind for us. If we have a diagnosis, we will work directly with them, and they have contact tracers. We will not expect to have our own contact tracers, but we will work with the public health to make sure we know exactly how that works. That's the way they have set it up. In fact, I understand they are hiring individuals whose job it will be to work directly with schools coming up in the fall.
That's correct. That's my understanding as well. But we'll have all the information needed for the contact tracing, correct?
Oh, yes. That's why we are having assigned seating that is not just the teacher knows what it is, but it's recorded assigned seating on the bus and in school.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, let's move on. Oh, wait. Oh, Liza, your hand is up again, or is it just still up?
Just still up.
Okay, thank you.
Thank
All
you.
right, let's move along there, Donna
All
and
right.
Kathleen and everyone.
Moving on to Matt Cashman, who's done yeoman's duty with his group looking at operations, and he's up now.
Thank you. Let's go, Matt.
All right, here we go. I do want to echo what Donna just said. Our and maintenance folks have been doing a great job ever since the outbreak of this. But to get right into the building setup, we're looking at limiting and repurposing the use of large spaces, gyms, cafeterias, that sort of thing. We're trying to be creative. We're looking at entrances and exits and using different parts of the building. We're going to be working with individual buildings to look at that. We're looking at staggered start and end times for custodians. We think all the examples we see around are signage for reminders of hygiene, distancing. So we're going to be looking at employing that sort of method. Again, we're going to get away from large gatherings, and we're really going to push to do outdoor education in classrooms. We've got tents on the next couple of weeks, so we're looking to encourage outside activities as much as possible. Next slide, please. We've talked about it tonight as part of our mitigating efforts. We're going to really try to encourage maintaining 6 foot distances. We talked a little bit about looking at the buildings and the pathways through the building and try to really limit, again, with signage, but keep people moving in the right direction, but keep them away from gathering in large groups. Again, we're looking at outside spaces as much as possible and staying away from large group meetings or events at the schools, at least to start off. Masks are a big thing. We're requiring everyone in the building to wear masks. I think that's a huge effort to help mitigate the spread of the disease. But we do understand some kids will have difficulty wearing masks. So in those cases, we won't ask them to wear the mask all day. But for everybody who is wearing a mask, we're going to try to provide breaks throughout the day to just let people take them off for a minute, but they would be outside. And we also are going to ask parents, especially for the younger kiddos, to have their parents and guardians show how to wear masks properly. Next slide. PPE. We got a lot of things going on with this. Students will be provided with masks. We have many disposable hospital masks right now, but we're continuing to order more from the state. Jack and I are working on a lot of vendors out there that are supplying all sorts of PPE. So we're looking to set something up to be on a continual replenishment basis. That would be clear masks, face shields, gloves, all sorts of PPE around restricting the spread of COVID. Ed assistance, we're going to be providing PPE essentially to everybody. Nurses and custodians, we're going to give a full array, including special eye protection, gowns, gloves, that sort of thing, just to keep people safe. We have been installing lots of plexiglass protection around admin assistant areas, offices, nurses' spaces, but we're continuing to look at other areas in the school, and we're able to get the plexiglass and put it up in a pretty safe fashion. Next slide. Any questions so far? Okay. Barbara, are you looking to?
Sorry, I've got a question before we go on to masks. It's Gina. Before we go on. So I know just from personal experience, because I wear binaural hearing aids. Are there any provisions for masks with ties as opposed to behind the ears? Or has consideration been given to people who just that not everyone can wear the masks that go behind the ear? That's just a comment.
There's a lot of different masks. There's the disposable, there's the cloth, there's the ones around the ears and around the back of the head to tie on. I'm sure we can look at different options to make it effective for individual students and staff.
Okay, so I see that we have, thank you, Gina. I see we have some other hand. I see Danielle's hand is up. So Danielle, we'll go with you next. And then Liza, your hand looks to be up. And then Jim, those three I can see right now. So go ahead.
I'm not sure if this is coming up in the next, but I was curious if hand sanitizer will be something that's also given to teachers or stocked up in the dispensers around the schools.
Yes and yes. That is a slide coming right up, but we are having hand sanitizers in all the classrooms, the bathrooms, entry areas. In many cases, we have that there now. We're working with our cleaning supply company to maintain good inventory levels of hand sanitizers. We're going to use signage as well to help encourage that.
Thank you.
Okay.
Gina, oh, did you already speak?
I did, thank you.
Okay, so I see another hand, but I can't find the name. Who else has their hand up?
I have my hand up. Go ahead, Jim.
Okay, Jim, then Jeff. Jim, then Jeff. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Matt. How are we going to handle elevators and those students who have some physical limitations going up and down stairs or along the halls when we're trying to keep social distancing?
We're gonna really look more and more into that, Jim. That's a very good question. Those are special confined spaces, if you will, elevators. So I think we need to involve more people and talk more options on how we can get around that.
Let me just I'll just interject. It's Donna. We've been meeting now with a consultant that we've hired from the hospital. I think Kathleen mentioned that. We've had a series of meetings of some about general pieces like distancing and masks. The next meeting we're having is actually about special circumstances. And so I love that question. We're going to add that to the list for that individual.
Nice.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, who's next? I don't
I
remember.
believe I am. Yeah,
Thank you, Chuck.
I
Go
am,
for it.
Barb. Yeah.
Yeah.
So Matt, first and foremost, thank you and your team for doing this, because I work in this environment and live in this world right now. And I will tell you, I'll be glad to, if you or Jack want to give me a call about PPE. I spent a lot of time doing this and thinking about this. So a couple questions. One is, as far as, are you using a calculation to determine how much PPE inventory you may need throughout the coming year? I mean, what are you basing your par levels and your inventory on?
Right now, Chuck, we're just trying to get our hands on it. We've been very fortunate to get a very good supply of from the federal government, gloves, masks, and other PPE. Some things we're finding difficult to get at the moment are clear face shields.
Yep. Are you? Yeah. Go ahead. I'm sorry, Matt.
No, we're also looking at gowns. But to answer your question on actually trying to determine a number, right now we're trying to get our hands on enough, and we feel like we've got a pretty decent inventory. I'd like to hear if you have equations that you use, what you might recommend. Donna and I met with the doctor last week, and he was recommending a number of, if it was a cloth face mask, up to about 5 cloth face masks per student. But I'm open to see whatever numbers you might use and compare them to ours and see how we can obtain more PPE for people.
Yeah, and I'll be glad to do that. And we can talk offline about that. Just give me a call. The other thing too is to think about, because there's disposable PPE, but there's also a product line of reusable PPE. And I don't know if you guys have investigated that as well. It's pretty effective. It requires some provisions, and it's some people like it, some people don't. But it's very cost effective, and in addition to that, it's a better level of protection. More importantly, so there's a lot of PPE, and my advice would be, whatever you could think you need, double it, because that's what you're going to need. Yeah, that's what you're going to need. Thank you, Matt.
Okay, I appreciate that. Sure. Any other questions before we move to the next part?
Matt, just a quick comment. I know there are safety and fire considerations, but if you can make doors so that people don't have to turn the knob or touch them and have them open or propped open, it's a very good thing for minimizing that number of people touching a door.
Absolutely. I am working with Concord Fire, talking to them about the use of tents and walkways and exits and entries and separation and those kinds of things. So I'll add that to the list.
And Matt, we put plastic like over elevator buttons and did things like that, and covered them and made them high touch areas, and we would change it out on a rotation for those buttons that would be pressed. So just give me a call if you want any suggestions.
I most definitely.
And don't spray them with disinfectant or you'll short out the buttons.
Yes. Got it.
We don't want.
Why do I feel like Jim how he knows?
Not gonna say that ever happened, but I just want to let you know that hand sanitizer and disinfectant does a number on pin pads and buttons.
Absolutely.
It sure does.
Clorox wipes, Jim. Clorox wipes.
All right, Matt.
Any other questions?
I think we're good.
Okay.
All right,
Donna,
go for it, Matt.
All right, cleaning and disinfecting protocols. So as we've talked about before, we have electrostatic sprayers in all of the schools. We just added a backup. So the elementaries have 2, the middle school has 4, high school has 4. They're very, very effective and efficient. So Part of our cleaning and disinfecting protocol is to continue to use those. We also will outfit all classrooms with the disinfectant. We're going to talk about that in a minute. They'll be in the classrooms and able to be used by staff to do what we talked about, surfaces, doorknobs, that sort of thing. We're also able to purchase through the CARES Act money. We call it a Zamboni style, but it's really a ride behind floor cleaning machine where it just helps us get more mileage in the schools with this automated style of floor cleaning machine. And then I think it was asked earlier, hand sanitizer stations will be mounted in the classrooms. They're all have been ordered. We have close to 350 that have been ordered. A lot of them are up. We're still waiting on a couple of product to arrive, but I think we're going to be in good shape. I've also met with all the head custodians. We've talked about, based on what model we pick, what type of adjusted schedule we would be looking at so that we can stay on top of this and be ahead of the curve and be clean and disinfected. So I alluded to it on the last slide. We have our supply company, cleaning supply company is out of Maine called Cleanorama, and they provide us with 2 approved by the CDC disinfectants. One is called Hyperfect 256, and that's basically our primary disinfectant. It comes in a spray. We put that into the electrostatic spray, the spray bottles. We use it to wipe down surfaces. And we also have another product called ViroTabs. It's a little bit stronger. We use that in areas where we want to have a little bit more airing out time, but they're both approved by the CDC. We have SDS sheets on all of it, and we'll make that available to everybody. But those are the 2 products that we use and have been using. We talked earlier about hand washing and sanitizing. We're going to encourage all students through the use of signs and teachers and staff, just reminding them when they enter the building, wash or sanitize your hands. We use the hand sanitizer. Please, don't touch your hands or face, but if you do, again, wash after the bathroom, lunch time, and playground time outside. Next slide. There's also additional cleaning protocols in the event of COVID-19, and there's more on this, but we'll just cover the highlights. We've reviewed with, I think Dr. Chan had a meeting with the nurses. Donna, I think you sat in this week, but there's certain protocols listed in front of us right now that we're looking at to close off the areas, air things out for about 24 hours to allow the respiratory droplets to settle before we go in and sanitize and clean. So you can see right there, we want to wait about 7 days to pass before the person who is sick visited or used the facility. We'll determine whether after that point disinfection is needed or not. Any questions on that so far?
Hey, Matt, go ahead. I'm raising my hand.
No, it's okay.
All right,
Yeah.
thanks. So and maybe you've answered this or hadn't even been determined yet. Who is doing your education, like on how to don and doff the PPE, how to use the sprays, because you have to let them set for a period of time before you wipe it down?
Sure.
Because it's worthless if you just, I mean, I know from experience, I've had housekeepers, they spray, they wipe it down.
Right.
That didn't really do any good. Who's doing is the nurse going to do the education as far as the PPE, or how's that going to be handled?
Well, let me start off with the chemicals that we use. Our cleaning supply company that we've had for over 4 years, they do a lot of training, but I can't echo enough. We've got a very experienced veteran staff of custodians led by some really good head custodians. So they know and they understand the product. They ask a lot of questions. We can offer training. I think your suggestion about nurses helping out with proper donning of that PPE is also something we want to tap into.
Because, I mean, like if you take it off incorrectly, in essence, you might as well you're spreading droplets if somebody is positive.
That's true. That is true. We have the Dr. Noble, who's a consultant. We've got a good crew of nurses, and I think those
Good.
are all precautions we need to carefully address.
Yeah, thank you, Matt.
Sure.
Okay, I'm going to go to Tom Croto now since you're the name I see. So Tom, what's your question?
Thank you, Barbara.
Yep.
So Matt, again, thank you for all that you're doing. It's just incredible, all the work that's going on for all of the people here. One of the concerns I had when I was reading this earlier today or yesterday was in your protocol for additional cleaning, it says in bullet number 1, close off areas used, but if a COVID-19 is confirmed in a child or staff member, you close off the areas used by the person who was sick, and then if possible, move the children remaining into the classroom to another environment until cleaning protocols can be implemented. I think as a parent, as a concerned citizen, I would say that, why are we, if possible, that should be an automatic. If we've got a confirmed case and a child's been in classroom 101, for any length of time, I think that as soon as it's confirmed, and I may be wrong on this, so, hear me out, that they should be moved immediately and the cleaning should be done immediately. But I guess I leave that up to the more professional people who know more about it. So that's one, Matt. And then the other is, in the event that we do determine that there's a student who has come to school already, they show signs, the nurse, does some various little tests with temperature and symptoms, and they determined that there's a very good possibility this little youngster or this adult has strong COVID symptoms. Do we have any sort of an isolation procedure, any particular place, any protocol in mind for that as well? And I know I may be pushing in particulars here, but we want to be prepared, of course.
So I'll try to, your question is a little loaded, so I'll try to answer it as best I can. But if I miss any things, just let me know. All of this protocol we're getting from the CDC and HHS. So we are talking and working within the schools, trying to find isolation rooms, find spots. How do we deal with, a student that presents symptomatic? What if they're asymptomatic? We talk a little bit later in a couple of slides further from this one about non-touch temperature checks, how to handle children if they have symptoms, how to send them home, that sort of thing. So I think, why don't we go into some of those slides, and as I go through that, why don't you see if I'm addressing it? If I'm not, then let's come back to some of what you're asking. Does that make sense?
That sounds good to me, Matt. As the facilitator
okay.
here, I think it's good that we're asking questions that you're going to answer and address in a bit. Before we move on, Gina and Jim, I see your hands up. So do you have questions? Yes?
I'm good.
All right.
Yes, no,
Gina?
I have a question.
Oh,
So
go for it, Gina.
I know that we're going to try and minimize moving kids from room to room as much as possible, but
Right.
when we do move kids from room to room, are we cleaning the room between cohorts arriving? Like if Mrs. Jones's class has to go from room 101, or the cohort has to go from room 101 to 327, are we cleaning 101 before the next group of people come in?
Well, we need to understand how much time that is. I mean, when you spray the disinfectant that we use, it needs about a 10-minute rest period before it dissipates and does its action. I do know that with a hand sanitizer and some of the sprays, we're going to try to clean doorknobs, hard touch surfaces, that sort of thing. But our cleaning is really going to take place after the school day ends, and then on the model that we presented earlier on Wednesday, we would look at a Wednesday disinfection day to get in and really do a deep disinfection of all the classrooms and common spaces.
Okay, so we're not looking at like the kids wipe down their desks with Clorox before they leave the room or something.
Well, I mean, nothing, everything is stuff we can talk about and work through and determine later. But, we're going to have the cleaning materials in there. If there is something that needs an immediate, it needs to be addressed immediately, we'll go in there and take care of it.
Okay, just trying to understand.
Sure. Okay. So we're on the slide of visitor and meetings. So in general, we're not going to really allow visitors to come in the building. We would all required in parental meetings would like to hold remotely. Until a time later that's deemed to be safe, we're going to hold off on volunteers in the building. In short-term situations, in the effort to limit exposure, we're going to try to utilize permanent subs and tutors and other personnel to cover if a teacher is absent. So we're talking over those types of protocols as well. Next slide. So we talked a little bit about screening. We're going to ask parents and guardians to screen their children at home before they come into school. We're going to provide a checklist to review with your kids to make sure that those questions are answered. And again, that's all based on medical guidance that we've received. There'll be non-touch thermometers. We have a pretty good supply of those. We want to be able to make them available to families in need. We are looking, again, with the New Hampshire guidance that just came out last week, we're going to be looking at having the ability to screen staff on school grounds. And, anyone that comes in, 100.4 is the magic number. If we have a child or a person that has that, would like to have them returned home. Next slide. And as we talked about, there's going to be protocols for response to COVID-like symptoms at school. So again, we're getting our guidance from the doctor, the CDC, and HH, Health and Human Services. So you can see we have a list of protocols of what we would do. Staff and would be educated on the symptoms and how to manage the proper protocol if COVID presents itself. And again, I can read it out loud to you, but it's right there. You can see we have other guidelines surrounding this. Donna, did you have anything on these slides with protocol you wanted to add into this?
No, the language is coming directly from the experts to us. Somebody asked briefly before about an isolation room, and yes, the expectation will be there will be spaces that will be designated specifically for an isolation space if needed. It'll be there, not just it'll be there if needed. It will be there, and then it will be available. So
it'll probably be needed.
And then, of course, we have protocols when an individual is confirmed with COVID-19. Hopefully that doesn't happen. At least 10 days passed since the symptoms arrived, and then 24 hours, free of a fever. And then once symptoms improve, we'll evaluate it with medical doctors. On air handling and filtration, this is our third year now. We have over 1,000 filters in the school district. We use Train Air Systems. It's an outside company. Every quarter they come in and they change all air filters in the school district. Our guidance is also talking about maximizing airflow in all of our systems. And we're working currently with Siemens, which is our building automation control company, and with Train to provide maximum airflow into the schools. Any questions?
Doing great, Matt. Oh, Jim, go for it.
Quick one. Matt, will we require all vendors and delivery personnel to wear masks and, if possible, to not enter the building but make deliveries outside? Has there been a protocol or position set up for that?
That's what we are going to have. We're requiring a mask by everybody, all staff members, and with outside vendors as well.
Okay. Excellent. I just would encourage you, that if they can leave their delivery and not come into the room, or notify someone and not come into the building, we'd be a leg up on that as well.
I think you're right. That's a good mitigation strategy.
Hey, Barb, it's Chuck. Quick question. And
Yep, go for it, Chuck. Thank you.
thank you. Several questions, actually. So,
And then Gina.
all right. Thank you. Sorry.
Yep.
Who is the, and maybe this is not just for Matt, but who is the point person? Somebody, well, let me back up. So who is going to take the temperature? Who's going to screen every employee every morning? What roles is that? The school nurse? Is it the receptionist, the administrative assistant? Who's going to be there when, a custodian is there, sits in the morning? What's the process for that? Like, that's where, and maybe it hadn't been developed, and that's what I'd like to hear.
We're in the process of developing our protocol. Ann Lanny, our nurse coordinator, who we met with, I think it was yesterday, and Dr. Noble have told us that using the no-touch thermometers requires no technical expertise and no analysis. And so we will look to see who makes sense to be doing this, and it will vary based on whether you're 3 years old, or whether you're a custodian, or whether you're 18 years old in the high school. All those protocols have to be developed specifically in terms of exactly who is doing this process. But
we're going to keep documentation of everybody's temperature every day.
No, that is not the recommendation right now. The hospital, for instance, does not keep the data on the negatives, only on the positives, and that's right now what they're recommending.
But how are we going to ensure people don't get missed if we don't keep documentation?
We'll have documentation that they were screened, but we are not recording their temperature every day. At least that's the recommendation right now.
Right, but you'll have documentation that they were screened. Yeah.
Exactly. We have to check. Yeah. We have to have a checklist. Exactly.
Yeah. And then are we going to have staff go? I hope we're not planning to have staff shared between the schools, because how are we going to mitigate? Because that right there to me is, that's a recommendation that's pretty significant. If we start having staff go from one school to the other school to the other school, that person right there just infected half the district, potentially.
And we're so lucky now, based on the generosity of our community and board, that, for instance, we don't have those. Remember those traveling school psychologists that now are not in the traveling in the same way. So we will look at all of our personnel in terms of travel, but we have a surprisingly small number of people, given the size of our district, who have to travel. And we're going to have to look at, as you said, we're going to have to look at the mitigation around about the essential nature of that or the non-essential nature of that. So we have to look at every position to see what the situation is, because obviously we want to keep as few contacts as possible in all of our situations if we're back at school.
Right. And lastly, how many additional school nurses do we need? And don't say none.
Thank you. Thank you, Chuck.
It's funny that you bring that up, Chuck, because we talked about that yesterday with Ann when Donna and I met with her. And that's the question I asked her, the resources that she feels she needs in her building, because my concern is that they're doing all these medical checks. They still need to staff that office. There's still kids that are going to come in with a bruised knee or a bump or whatever, right? And so we need to address that. So we started that conversation with Ian yesterday. So we'll get back to you on that, because I believe there is going to be a need.
Hey,
and me too. And I would also say, I would guarantee, almost willing to bet money, that if we even are totally remote, we probably will still need school nurses. And then, and then I do want to circle back as far as like with Project Key and people like that, like seeing the kindergarten student every day and things like that. Like, I think we really need to look at those positions that go from school to school, because I think it may be more than we think. And I think I'd like a listing at the August meeting of like how many positions with position titles.
Okay. You mean position title?
Yeah, like there's a speech therapist or 5 schools or speech therapist.
Yeah. Those people that would move, though.
Yeah, I don't necessarily need to know their names. I mean, that's none of my concern, but more the titles, the roles.
Yeah, the roles and are they moving? Yep.
Thank you.
So this is Barb, and I'm going to interject for a moment. So school nurses. So So my thoughts are, in looking at, I have several family members in the medical community, and would it be in our, is it something that we could look into to hiring LNAs, licensed nursing assistants that can perform the Band-Aids and the,
Right.
like if we can't, hire 50 full-time nurses, which
Right.
trust me, we could probably use them. But there are so many unbelievably dedicated young people that get their LNA on their way to becoming a nurse. This might be something that we could look into to perform these. Like when I go for my physical therapy at Concord Orthopedics, a sweet friend of Gracie's who just graduated high school is an LNA, and she asks me all the COVID questions at the door of the office and takes my temperature, and she's an LNA and she's performing this wonderful service. So my suggestion is that we as a district look into this, because it's a much more cost-effective way to provide trained people to perform these basic needs, and then our nurses can do the diabetes and the special needs and all the serious things that come up with our students.
Right. You just have to know though, Barb, that, when you bring in these folks, they practice under the license of the registered nurse. So we have to be very careful.
Okay.
I was leaning towards an LPN,
right.
which has a bit more experience.
Yeah, more than an
But
LNA.
I don't want to dismiss the LNA, but
No.
I do worry about supervision and the practice under that RN's license.
Thank you,
So
Kathleen. This is why you're the superintendent.
right. We'll
Thank
just
you.
keep an eye on that for you.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
Okay, Gina, do you still have a question?
I do. In
Good,
looking
go for
through
it.
in looking through all of the paperwork, I do not see any protocol about what to do about when a kid is either suspected or confirmed to have COVID. What about the other students and teachers that child has come in contact with, or that teacher has come in contact with? I don't see anything about that protocol, and I guarantee every single parent who's listening in wants to know that answer.
Yes, we will have that protocol in place for the August meeting. Absolutely.
Thank you, Donna.
It's essential.
Lot of HIPAA concerns there.
Okay.
No kidding. Yeah.
But I also want to say that it's been very clear that if we have a student or a teacher diagnosed with COVID-19, that our responsibility will be immediately to call Health and Human Services and the Department of Public Health, and they are there. They are stationed and ready to guide us through that process. So we just need to have the language of exactly what steps we take. Obviously, we isolate the youngster or the teacher, and they are home in a private vehicle with a set of circumstances. So, but we will be working directly with Health and Human Services and Public Health.
Right. I in listening to the governor's guidance, I just think I think this is a very, very sensitive, important topic to be completely transparent about, so that parents know that their child is not going to be at increased risk, or that everything's being done.
Right.
And at least in the paperwork that I've seen, that it's not even addressed. So that was a concern.
Okay, great point. Thank you. Barb, if there's no more questions, could we move on to Donna? She's going to go over food service.
Absolutely. Let's do it. Oh,
okay.
Yeah, thank you. Go for it, Donna.
Moving into food service, we are looking at each cafeteria to determine whether we can distance and how many students would reasonably be there. Otherwise, we are really looking at eating in classrooms, outside, or in other spaces. So we are at each level and in each building, people are looking very closely to see. We don't want to certainly congregate large groups of students inside. So that is a piece. Breakfast and lunch will be provided as grab and go. We had I have to say that we have to really commend our food service program, Donna Reynolds and her crew. They did an amazing job getting food out to our community during this spring, and we are waiting for the waivers for details on delivery of food into the community. We certainly hope that they're going to enable us to still do that, and we would intend to do that. We have to wait for the waivers. All protocols, obviously, that are required for health and safety will be followed by food service staff regarding PPE requirements.
I'm going to talk a little bit about transportation, which is the next slide. And so we've been working with our director of transportation to, we're still working out some details. So this is kind of the big picture, but first of all, the buses will be clean and disinfected before and after pickups and drop-offs. When possible now, windows will be open. You know, the key is fresh air. We are hesitant about closing up those buses, but you know, if it's raining out, you got to close the windows. So, but any occasion that we can, we will have those open. At the bus stops, because you know the kids are waiting for the bus, we're going to try to work on the 6-foot distance with maintenance, and we're going to seek some parental oversight. You know, these are the kinds of things we'll talk about with them at the forum, I just think that we'll ask parents to give us a hand and to help us out with social distancing. We're also asking parents if they're able to transport their students if possible. Donna has a slide in a little bit to show you the number of parents who have indicated if they're beyond the radius of walking, that they will be able to provide transportation for their youngster to school. So we're looking at that also. Students, I think we mentioned it before, like in the classroom, students will be assigned a permanent seat on the bus. The spacing on the bus, it fluctuates, quite frankly. At first, it was the 6 feet distancing, which only allowed about 13 or 14 youngsters on a 77-passenger bus. Now they're moving a little bit more into every other seat and at angles and rotating the seats. So you know, on one side, it's one seat, and on the other side, it's the opposite. So we're still working that out with seating, but Terry's working on that with me. So I have a meeting with him actually this week to discuss that.
Can I interject a quick comment here? Can siblings sit together? You know, like if you have 2 kids from the same family, can they not share a seat?
They could. They could.
Because that just increases.
That will help.
Okay.
That will certainly help.
I don't need it. I just wanted to point that out.
Yeah, that's a great point. Great point. There will be no field trips that require transportation. Now, if there's a walking trip to a location in Concord that's reasonable to walk to, of course, that will happen, but no transportation for field trips. We're going to limit that. We don't want kids in Boston or wherever else, you know, in terms of exposing themselves to the virus. So we're going to limit field trips. If I can go to the next slide, I just wanted to kind of give you an overview of the consultation and the training that that's underway, where we're getting our expertise from, and I think we've mentioned Dr. Noble several times. He's the medical director for infection prevention at the hospital. He's been a great resource for us and will continue to be a resource for us through this process. And of course, our training, Matt mentioned it, our custodians will all receive training from Matt and from the companies that we buy a lot of the products from. I think that's incredibly important. I think Chuck brought up a good point. How do I handle my mask? How do I put on this shield? How do I put on the gowns and wear them properly so that they're optimum, we get optimum use out of them. So we'll continue to do that. I think we mentioned Cleanorama for some training for our staff. And again, when we get the staff back in, we have to go over all this training in terms of safety protocols for them. They need to know exactly what to do and when to do it and how to do it and who to make sure they reach out to. District nurses are fabulous. I'm happy to hear that you agree that we should really support them. They're going to have a lot on their hands. And they get all their training from the Health and Human Service. They met with the doctor this week, and they continue to meet with him to get information. And last, but we're responding to the guidance from the New Hampshire Department of Ed and the governor's office and CDC. I wish the governor's report gave us a little bit more specifics. It didn't. It really highlighted flexibility. But I think you can see from our presentation tonight that we took a few more steps than flexibility. we're insisting on masks. We're insisting on no visitors. We're insisting on the 6 feet social distancing so that we can ensure that if in fact we come back to school, that we will have the protocols in place to do everything we can to ensure safety for the kids. So I think Dawn is going to jump in and do family supports, and then I will do communication, and we have a few more things, but hopefully we can wrap this up.
So I think family supports have come up in lots of different areas. So this is just a kind of a roundup of that. I think Pam spoke to the support that we offer families already around the technology, whether it's connecting with Wi-Fi that they need or helping them with a problem or an issue at home with their technology. And providing technology training for families has been discussed as well. In addition, groups that are working on academic development and social emotional well-being want to provide information, training, support to families as students will be most likely spending some time learning at home as we go forward. And our referrals to families for additional community services, whether it's food, social, emotional, or other needs, we're lucky to have great partners in the community and ongoing conversations so that can happen. Translation services are well available to us, and we use them regularly. I mentioned the access to the internet, and again, just having this two-way communication channel between school and home is going to be important, and we just need to really build that. We need to work on that and create that. Staff want it, and families want it, and sometimes it can be hard for staff because they are trying to reach out. I've heard many teachers talking about the efforts that they've made to reach out to families, and sometimes it can be difficult for them to get the support or we need to help everybody, make that happen.
Great. So that's a great segue into a communication plan, because that's critical. We really have to make sure that we deploy a variety of strategies to ensure that our stakeholders know the plan, what the expectations are. We'll use the district website, social media, Facebook, those tools, obviously the cable TV, Concord TV, school messenger, and media outlets. We talked about the forums, and I have two down there, but from your suggestions that we need to do more, so we'll add more opportunity. When we do the forums, I want you to know that we would like to break it out in elementary, middle, and high school, because they're all different. The elementary parents are going to have certain needs and want information different than perhaps the high school. The high school may be more interested in the SATs and the PSATs, as well as athletics and different things. So when we do the forums, we will break them out according to those 3 levels, just so you know. Again, I think I mentioned this already, but there will be a protocol should there be a suspected or a confirmed case that central office administration, my office, will coordinate with the New Hampshire Department of Health and Human Services and Public Health. So that way we can get the support and whatever we need from them in terms of tracing and contact tracing and all of the pieces to that, so that we do the right thing for our staff and our students. I think Donna just mentioned we'll have all of our information translated into various languages that are represented in our community. I actually this week had a chance to talk to the mayor and the city manager and the Boys and Girls Club and the Y. We're reaching out to all of our community groups, and we will be sharing our plans with them and all of the local agencies and community partners, because we think everybody needs to know exactly what we're doing, and they're most anxious to know exactly what we're doing. So, and along with the fire department and our local PD, I told Chief Osgood last week that we would do that. Once we get some kind of plan in place and you're comfortable, we're going to really need to message all of this out to staff, student, and families. I've gotten several emails from families saying, as soon as you can tell us what you're doing, it will help us as we prepare what are we going to do as a family? How are we going to manage our children? Who's going to take care of them? Do we need daycare? all of those things. So we will be, we will go 100 miles an hour to get that information out to families, because I think it's critical that they know what we're doing. This is not near the last but least, but it is a big issue, you know. I'm only going to bring you up to date about what's happening right now in athletics. I think it's pretty hard to be able to say what's going to happen in the fall, because we're really waiting for NHIA recommendations. And if you recall, in the spring, they held off for quite a while before they made decisions around the spring season and all the tournaments. So I'm going to just, this slide kind of gives you an idea of what's happening now, that they're focused on just conditioning skills and drills once the state allowed them to be able to come out and practice. All activities are outdoors. We're not using locker rooms, so the kids have to come, the youngsters have to come prepared. They're not going into locker rooms. All of the parents and students signed liability waivers. They all fulfilled the health questionnaire. They had to be completed before the student participated. They also do daily screening is conducted, and including the temperature taking. Daily screening is about the questions: have you been in contact with anyone who's ill lately? Have you been out of the state or in another state in the last, have you been out of state? So those are the questions, along with the temperature taking. Again, the coaches and all the supervisors ensure that there's no congregating of the large groups. Coaches are wearing masks if they can't distance. And we ask the students to wear their masks until they come on the field. Under Steve Mello's direction, coaches have received training in the protocols and procedures with the youngsters that they're working with. These are the sports that they're doing right now: cross country, soccer, football, basketball, cheerleading, field hockey, and Nordic. We kind of chuckled with the Nordic. We didn't know it was snowing. But I noticed there was snow on Mount Washington still, so I don't know. Anyway, the kids are getting ready for their ski season, which is great. Evaluating all of the social safety protocols with their workouts. And again, the fall is still under review, and we'll wait for NHIAA to give us direction. So that's it in a nutshell. Donna's going to give you some more data around what's driving this plan, so you can see it. Donna, you want to?
Yep, I'm going to wrap this up.
Okay.
Surveys were sent to parents and staff during the week of July 13th. The parent one went out first, the staff went out second. Data is still being collected. It is open, and I'll show you in a minute results that we have as of yesterday morning around 10. Parents were asked to indicate their model preference and their current thinking about regarding their children's return to school. Understand, this was a really difficult thing to ask people, and I corresponded with a lot of families about this. How do you know? It's like a chicken and egg thing. Well, I don't know what I'm doing until I hear what you're doing. And, we can't know, it's hard to know what we're doing until we know what you want. So we understand it was really, really a difficult question to ask, but people did a great job of giving us some feedback that really helped us understand. So parents were asked to indicate their model preference, their current thinking about where they were regarding their child's return to school. And in addition, parents who live outside the school walking zone were asked whether they'd be able to provide transportation. Transportation, it happens in other ways. It can sometimes rule schools, around schedules, the number of buses that you have. And in this case, obviously, there are issues around that. Staff were asked about their model preference, and they were also asked whether there were special circumstances that would prevent them from returning to in-person schoolwork. And people were asked to give their names, and not to tell us about medical conditions, but just to give us our names. And so parents were also asked to give children's names so we could start to see who we were thinking would come back and who we were thinking might not. So I'm going to show you these. There's quite a lot. They will be on our website. We have an addition to our website called Return to School 2020. It has the results of our June surveys. We did very extensive surveys, anonymous surveys in June. We had thousands of people respond to those. We had families, we had students, and we had staff. This survey, you can see as of yesterday at 10, we had 2,534 responses for students, and we still have some more to go. But you can see that overall, and I know there's a lot here and it's late, so I'm asking a lot of you to look at this, but you can see that about 6% of the parents in this group are saying, I definitely will not be sending my child. 6%. About 25-ish% are saying, I'm fully comfortable sending my child right now. So we have those extremes, and then we have a leaning towards sending and a leaning towards distance. We've always had in mind that we thought about 25% total might be home, and this seems to suggest probably we're pretty close on that. In terms of the models that people are leaning or are interested in, 100% in person or a hybrid model has the lion's share. Obviously here about 25, or at high school a little bit lower, elementary school a little higher, folks are leaning in those directions. And then when you see the outside the walk zone versus the within walk zone, those folks who said they were outside the walk zone were then sent to a question about whether they were able to transport. And you can see so far that we have a very large percent of our families who are saying that they would be able to transport. So we'll continue to monitor that. We still have more folks to go, but that has given us some overall helpful information. This will be posted also on the Back to School 2020 part of our, if you go right into our website, sau8.org, you can see that. The June results are already there, and these will be posted tomorrow. Staff were asked 2 questions. If we're back in our buildings in the fall, would you be in a position to return to your assignment in your school building? And they were first asked about their preference for a model of the 3 models that we're talking about. And you can see that there's some variation from elementary to middle to high school, with our elementary teachers more anxious to be physically present with their students. This includes preschool, by the way. I know we keep saying 3 levels. We have preschool as well. In terms of preferences for being in person, full-time, or in a hybrid model, that represents about 75% of those folks, with a smaller proportion wanting to continue. And then it differs. Again, you see over half the staff at middle and high schools would like to make that happen. If possible, they prefer that. But then I'm going to show you the next question, which is, if we're back to in-person learning, are there special circumstances that would prevent you from returning to school? And you can see that, again, a slightly fewer, a majority of teachers at the elementary are endorsing special circumstances, but at the middle and high, you can see that it's about half and half. When we looked at the comments in the comment field, we saw that some people are extremely concerned about childcare, which is totally understandable. This is a huge pressure on families. If we have, for instance, we have 2 teachers who are working here with us. They're married to each other. They have 2-3 children, and the 2-3 children are in an A or a B model, but they're in a 4-day model. So you can see the dilemma that people are in to think about what could be a childcare potential, not only for families, but also for our staff, some of whom live in other districts. Their kids go to different districts, and those districts are making different decisions than we're making. So that's a huge consideration and concern for our staff, and we understand that. The other thing would be medical concerns or other kinds of concerns that will mitigate that will make it difficult for them to be at school. We wondered, one small thing that I'll just say is that we've been looking at our own staff to understand, how many of our staff are 60 or above. In our teacher group, it's just 9% of the teacher group, a very small number. I think it's 34 teachers altogether. So, we have a younger group, but again, that means some of them are pregnant. Many of them have young children. So, we look at the demographics and we try to understand where we're at for now. This is an ongoing survey. We'll need to start getting more specific sort of registration information. I think someone mentioned that as we go forward.
So Barb, I think maybe we could have some questions on those last 4 or 5 slides.
Yeah.
And then I will wrap it up if that's how you'd like to handle it.
That sounds terrific, Kathleen. So as an instructional committee chair and a longtime teacher in the district, we have heard so many unbelievably good questions from our board members. And we just had a ration of information about things affecting our teachers. And Kim Blyer very politely raised her hand to ask a question. And I do not feel that Kim is public. I feel that Kim is a teacher and a union rep. So I would love, Kim, for you to share what you're thinking and ask your question because again, like board members and community members make decisions that affect teachers. And so I would love to hear what you have to say.
Hi, everybody.
Hi,
Kim
Kim.
Blair. I actually wear multiple hats. I have kids who go to school in the district, and I love my work teaching at Concord High School. But right now I've got my union hat on, and I'm speaking on behalf of the leadership of the teachers union. I want to thank everyone in the district who's done so much work and put so much time and effort into this, and the board for so many thoughtful questions here tonight. We have a lot of the same questions that were raised here tonight. In terms of process, we've been having weekly meetings with Superintendent Murphy and Assistant Superintendent Pally. And so we feel like it's really been a pleasure getting to know Kathleen. And our meetings have been really productive. And we look forward to continuing this open collaborative dialogue with them as we try to move forward and figure out what the fall looks like. With that said, though, at this point, the district has fallen short on a lot of the answers to our questions, a lot of information that we require. And I'm not going to get into all the ins and outs of that right now because it's late and a lot of our concerns have already been addressed by board members. And so we're anxious to bargain conditions of health and safety for teachers. We're anxious to bargain working conditions as they apply to the terms of our collective bargaining agreement. But because we don't have so many of those answers at this point, the CEA is not currently in favor of any plan that involves face-to-face work between staff and students, because we feel like right now, without answers to more of our questions, there isn't really a guarantee for the safety of staff and students. And we are really not willing to shoulder the responsibility should a student get sick, should someone in a student's family get sick, should a staff become sick or worse. So I guess I have more of sort of like our perspective where we sit right now and less of a question, but that's where we're at right now.
Hey, Kim, I really need to thank you for that. You know, I'm a teacher too. I have students at my own school. And I remember when we were going through all of our How We Young stuff 2 summers ago, and we had these amazing meetings. And I think it was David Parker who brought up, we're making decisions for students and teachers, and there are no students and teachers in this room. And so I think I'm hoping that what you're sharing will do. I don't take it as a criticism or an insult at all. I take it as your concerns on behalf of your constituents, your fellow teachers. But what I'm hoping is that your words will give parents and other teachers and other community members the courage to speak up if they're having doubts about it. Because really, I think if tonight has shown me anything as a former teacher, as a current teacher, and as a board member, and a parent, and the mother of a child who died, is that this collaboration is phenomenal and necessary. So I just want to thank you for speaking up.
Sure, thank you for the opportunity.
Yep. Okay, so I see Jim and somebody else. So Jim, you go next. I'll find the other one.
Okay, just want to bring up in the transportation area, I believe Matt mentioned earlier, and I know Tom mentioned it, parents willing to drive and transport children is a good thing for us fitting enough kids into buses, but creates some real potential safety and some real issues with traffic around our schools. I know that a couple of years ago, there was the police, the city engineer, Matt, some parents had a task force framed around safe routes to school. I would encourage you to put together that task force or a similar task force very quickly, because we already have a lot of traffic issues and safety issues associated with drop-offs at schools where the lanes and the parking areas and the driveways are not adequate, and this could be a real big issue. So I would just encourage Matt to reach out to those folks, and especially to the city engineer and to the police, to make sure that we have the additional traffic covered.
Will do, Jim.
Excellent. All right. I don't know if I can't see if I'm muted or not. Okay. So next, David Parker, let's go. What do you have to say?
Very quickly, yikes. There's so many things to consider here. And I really, my hat's off to all of you, to Donna, to Kathleen, to Matt. But the variables are huge. And when I look at that last slide, when I look at 50% of our staff really question whether they're going to want to go to work. I mean, we have, are we going to be able to get to a place where they feel comfortable working? And I think if anyone could, it's this team right here. We're a talented board and we're a talented district, but yikes, that's a big concern. You want people wanting to come to work. This discipline is challenging enough. And I just listened to 3 hours of this and I'm totally overwhelmed. But thank you all. And I don't know how we're going to pull it off, but somehow maybe. Thank you.
Well, David, comments like yours are why we're going to pull it off, because we really are all in this together. And I took nothing from Kim's testimony except that the teachers are very afraid to shoulder a responsibility that could hurt people. I don't hear teachers not wanting to work. I don't hear teachers saying, I need my hours. I don't hear teachers saying any of those things. What I hear is that we have a faculty that wants to protect themselves, their families, and our children.
Absolutely.
So,
and I have the same feeling for myself because I am in that risk category. And so these many questions need to be answered before any of us can really feel safe. And everything, a lot of things have unintended consequences. So good job, everybody. Just great work.
Exactly.
Great work. Thank you so much.
Okay,
Really.
Liza, sweetie, it's your turn.
Okay.
Liza.
Thank you. I'll also offer my thanks. The community and the staff have been really quite amazing. So thank you for putting all this together. I had a similar reaction to David's to that last slide. And I guess what I would love to learn more about between now and August 3rd is what is the advice from the state, or what's the science, or what are the statistics that are going to make people feel like we're ready to go to a hybrid? Because based on this graph alone, we don't have enough teachers to provide teaching under the hybrid model, never mind full in-person. So if Merrimack County goes without any new cases for 28 days, is that, what are the triggers that are going to make people feel safe and satisfied? As a parent, I think, I'm really happy to be in New Hampshire for one thing, because I think we've got it a lot easier than a lot of other states. But what are those factors that are really going to give us a comfort level with, putting staff and students together? Thanks.
Thank you, Liza. Jenny's next. And then I think I see Danielle.
Great. Thank you, Barb. I'll briefly just echo what other board members have said and say again, thank you, Barb, for facilitating the meeting. Thank you, Kathleen, and the team and all the presenters, Donna, Pam, Steve, Matt. Clearly, we're right in the middle of the biggest issue facing the country right now, and we're talking about 10 days to decide. Let's do what we can to give ourselves more time if we can. Let's assimilate all this information. Let's continue to circle back and think about our processes, because this is really, really, really challenging. And I think that we all want to give it as much of our attention as we can over the next 10 days and the next, month, because it will be changing. So thank you for all of this work, and I'm sure we'll be having more of these conversations. And thank you also to all of the members of the public who tuned in. I think this is the biggest meeting that we've had
in a long time.
Remote meetings by a long shot, and I know there are a lot of questions and it's a lot to absorb. So we will be continuing to have the conversations. So thank you.
Thanks, Jenny. Okay, Jim, what do you got? Jim?
Who are you looking for, Barb?
Jim,
No, I'm good.
Jim?
I'm good.
Oh, you're good, okay.
I just wanted to say thank you to the staff. As we end this, it was a great amount of information. Other than that, I'm good.
So I'm just going to pipe in right now and say that before we get to the still to come, I need to thank Jenny Patterson, because for the last 900 meetings that we've had since March 13th online, she's done this, and I'm exhausted. I have a headache. I want to say everything right, and I want to not look funny on camera. So Jenny, I just love you. I need you to know. So I'm gonna let the meeting close, but I think the world needs to give Jenny Patterson a hug remotely.
Hey, Barb. Yeah. Hey, Barb. It's Chuck.
Yeah.
I did have a question.
Okay,
Yeah,
go
I'm
for it.
sorry.
And then Tom after
Yeah.
you.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I would never.
No, and then
take
Gina
Mr.
after
Crow's
that.
place. Yeah. All right. So a couple things I'd like to see going forward. First of all, I'd like to, everybody put a lot of work into this. So kudos to everybody involved. I know it's a lot of work. I know there's no easy answers to all this. With that said, though, I'm curious, and it was, the CEA voiced their opinion. Do we have other labor unions, other stakeholder groups that are involved, the ed assistants, the transportation folks?
Yeah,
Are
no,
they?
that's a great question, Chuck. I can answer that. I meet with the CEOPA, which is the office personnel, as well as I have a meeting scheduled with the educational associates. Terry's been talking with transportation, and Matt with the custodians. So yes, that is.
I'd like to know where they are too.
Yeah. I will. We will share that with you. I'll get a position on each one of them.
And if we do go back hybrid, this is a question I didn't see answered. Hypothetically, we go back hybrid, and we have 50% of one school, one grade level of faculty out. Let's say hypothetically, do we have enough contingency plans in our model to deal with that in case do we close the school? I would like to see a little bit more of what's our plan? Because it could happen. Thank you. Thanks for the hard work.
Yeah, thanks, Chuck. That's a great comment.
All right, Gina?
I just want to say thank you. The amount of work that has gone into this plan is astronomical. And I just, I've been sort of pacing the floorboards going, oh my God, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? And the amount of work that you all have put in to give us an idea of what we're going to do, or what we may end up not doing. I don't know, but the amount of work that you all have put into this is simply astonishing. And I want to say thank you.
Thank you, Gina. All right, Tom Croto, your turn.
So I'll echo all of that. Just an amazing amount of work. So back to Kimberly Blair Woods. Kimberly, and you don't need to answer this really right now, but the CEA, among many others, but CEA is a very, very important part to this whole picture. And until your group feels safe and we can get that chart to look a little more usable, we're going to need to know specifically from your folks that you represent, what is it that Concord School District Administration Board can do to make your folk feel safer? There may not be a great answer to that, or one that can be doable. I mean, and many of us in the city of Concord and nationwide would like to say, here's what we can do. But if there's a way to get your folks to feel more comfortable in the event that we do a hybrid model, what is it specifically that would need to happen? And I think that list would be wonderfully accepted by Kathleen Murphy at the administration level. And then it would behoove us to try and figure out ways to accomplish that. Thanks.
Can I finish up or? would
Yeah,
you-
no, it's your turn. I'm done.
Okay,
I was just
yeah,
trying to
no,
make
I
sure I
just want to
wasn't
make
muted.
sure we've heard from
No,
everybody.
it's all
Just,
for you, Kathleen.
yeah,
Go,
just
go.
a quick still to
Yeah.
come. You know, there
Yeah.
are still questions out there. I think you've all alluded to that. And so we put up a list that there may be more, and I put what else, and I've already heard some of the what else, and we've recorded that. So that's really helpful. Tonight has been incredibly helpful. I think to answer the question about the teachers of the Teachers Association or the Para Association, whatever group, you know, whatever union group, I think it's about communication. And we have been adamant about, since I came to the district, I've been meeting with the union every single week. And we go over we went over some of the issues on the PowerPoint tonight that you saw, but there are others, and we know that. But I am absolutely confident working with Kim and Mike and Karen. We've had great conversations. I know that we can come to some conclusions that will ensure that their members feel safe in coming to work. If we go whatever remote, whether we go hybrid or whether we go full time, right? So I will pledge that that communication, and we will continue to work, because I said it at the very beginning tonight. There's two groups that make this happen, and it's kids, right? All of our kids and our teachers. So I mean, come on, right? The rest of us are here to support our students and our teachers and staff, because I don't want to. The paras have been incredible. Our custodians, everybody. It's amazing what goes on here. And you know, I know my picture is short, but you should be proud of the work that's been done by your administrators, your teachers, and the union doesn't come to the table to fight. They're not opposed. They just want answers. And you know what? Rightly so. They deserve those answers.
And Kathleen, you have to know, Kathleen, that as a district that has been union angry, you know, you're a breath of fresh air right now. I'm getting teary-eyed. I cry at everything now, but you know, I'm a 21-year teacher in this district where being in the union was a negative thing, and all the negative union stuff. And just to hear you support a union that's so important to me, that did a lot for me in my struggles. It's all of us. We have to work together. It's the only way that this works.
Yeah, it's our profession.
Yes,
it's
it is.
our profession. And so I'm going to do everything. And our team at the central office have bent over. We're meeting with folks, trying to find solutions. You know, sometimes it takes a little longer, right? But it's happening, and we're communicate. So we're going to ramp that up. And in closing, I will say that we'll post this PowerPoint will be on the website, and we'll start to put together a question and answer kind of fact sheet, factoid, so that people have that. And we will set up those forums and try to get 2 in before your August meeting. But I would ask you too to consider the calendar request that I made.
Yes.
Because that will give us another week. And so when I looked at the calendar today, that would give us from tonight till we open 6 weeks. And I think that will help us, not only for our staff, but for making all these decisions.
So is this something that you need a vote on now, or is this something we can do at the August?
I think we can do it at the August meeting,
Okay.
but I think it will really help us get that, the time that we need to.
I don't think anyone here is against that at all. So I think that should be fine.
Okay. All right. Well, thanks. This was terrific tonight.
Oh.
What great discussion, what great collaboration. It's the best.
It's when I like being on the school board. Trust me, there are nights.
That's right.
Nights I'm not a fan.
It's not always a bed of roses.
Right. So is there anyone, Tom, I see your hand up. Is there anyone else that wants to say anything before I end the meeting?
That was a leftover hand. Sorry.
That's all right. You have a beautiful hand. You have a beautiful hand, Tom. All right. So I know that we do not need a roll call to end the meeting. So I'm just going to, I would like to make a motion that we end the meeting. Do I have a second?
Second.
That would be Chuck, yes?
Yep.
All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Barb?
Yes. Yes, do I need to do a roll call?
I think,
I'll do it. I'll
no,
do it.
it's a committee meeting, so you just need someone on the committee to
Committee.
second the motion,
Oh,
which
oh,
Chuck is not on the
sorry.
committee.
I'm sorry.
Sorry,
Yeah.
I didn't need to be overly
Why did
zealous.
I think Chuck was on the committee? All right, so,
I'll second it.
all right, Gina, thank you. And so we have committee members ended. So David, do you vote aye that we end the meeting?
Aye.
Gina, yes?
Aye.
I say aye, and
Danielle, aye.
all right then, ladies and gentlemen, have a lovely night. And again, thank you, Concord, for being such a wonderful community.
Have a good night.
Thank
Right.
you.
Night.
Thanks,
Thank you.
everybody.
Good night.
Good night.
Thank you.
Good job, Barb.